Hello. Welcome to my channel Touching Stories. You're about to hear an amazing story about love and unexpected decisions. Enjoy watching.
Oh, Selena, look how handsome John is, Betty told her friend. She was 6 months pregnant herself. Spit, her friend looked at her. Laughed Betty. That's good. The girl lifted her son in her arms and kissed him. You're so superstitious. Betty always knew that. God protects him, Selena said. They had been friends since high school, and now that they had both graduated and married, one was already a mother and the other was just getting ready. Where are they? Betty looked at her watch. I don't know, they should be here by now, she shrugged. Today was their special day. It was on this date that Betty and Selena had met their husbands. Yes, Harry and Carlos were friends. They'd been walking the streets of the city like girls, and apparently, as fate would have it, they'd met two friends. Since then, exactly 5 years had passed. They played weddings 1 month apart. At first, they wanted it to be on the same day, but then the girls changed their minds. And today they gathered to celebrate a small anniversary of their acquaintance, waiting only for their husbands. Are they knocking? Betty looked at her friend when she heard a sound. I don't know, go look. Carlos has keys. She looked toward the front door. Betty got up and went to open it. Indeed, there were young men standing on the landing with so many bags in their hands that they couldn't even knock properly. Wow, Harry, she can feel you even through the doors. Carlos looked at his friend. Come on, we were just scraping by. They entered the apartment. Where are you going? The girls looked at the huge bags. Now we'll get everything ready and sit at the table. Her husband did not answer her question. And he and Carlos really went into the kitchen, closed the doors, told the wives to wait a little. They looked at each other and quietly went into the room. That's the way it always was. Betty and Selena were very good guys. They were always in charge. The wives just had to be there for them and love them. Well, that was it. An hour later, Harry came out of the kitchen. He and his friend had dragged a large table to the middle of the room and began carrying the dishes they had just prepared themselves onto it. Boys, did you really do all this yourselves? Betty marveled at it every time. Enough already, her husband kissed her on the cheek. They sat down at the table. Everything looked delicious. Carlos poured wine into glasses. We thought of you too. The young man smiled and pulled another bottle from under the table. You what? I'm nursing and Betty's pregnant, Selena told him immediately. It's non-alcoholic, hubby parried. Good, then let's have it. She set up 2 glasses. It was so family-friendly, the friends sat around, reminiscing about everything they had, how they met, what they talked about, and the rest. I feel sick. Betty covered her mouth with the palm of her hand. Hurry up, Harry took her hand. She didn't return to the table again. In the evening, the couple went home. I don't believe there is such a friendship, Betty said to her husband in the evening. How can it be? Because we have one. He looked surprised. Yes, I realized that, but still, she was silent. But it was true. In all the years of their friendship, neither the boys among themselves, nor the girls, nor their families had ever quarreled. There had been a few misunderstandings, but never a big fight. Are you going out? Selena called her friend. I can't, it's my stomach, she admitted. You need to go to the hospital, the girl worried. She was silent, counting what Betty's due date was. I'd already thought about it. But I want to wait for Caustic, she said, but she was in pain. When are you due? Selena finally asked. In 3 days, clutched Betty. She was already sitting down. It hurt so much. Urgently, call an ambulance, her friend advised. Okay, there was silence on the other end of the phone. BT, Selena shouted, but there was silence in response. The girl crouched down in the hallway. She could hear her name being called from the tube, but there was nothing she could do. She couldn't even inhale or exhale. The pain was so intense. A key was inserted into the keyhole. The girl turned around. Harry entered the apartment. He was in a good mood. He saw his wife on the floor. Everything immediately changed. He realized that he needed to go to the hospital. Now, love. 1 minute. He ran to the phone and dialed 911. Help. She held out her hand to him, but he didn't. He just walked over and lifted her into his arms. Everything was ready. All that was left was to wait for the paramedics. They arrived. Harry carried his wife to the car. They took her to the hospital. The young man wanted to go with them, but they wouldn't let him. They wouldn't let him in the hospital anyway. Ah, she was already in the labor room. There were doctors all around. "Come on, honey, soon you'll be a mom," the midwife commanded her. There was a baby crying in the room. Betty looked at the baby and cried too. She was now the mother of the most beautiful baby girl, Lucy. She took her tiny hand as she lay on her chest. "Congratulations," the doctor whispered in her ear. "Thank you." The girl lay there, somewhere in the distance, still feeling the pain that had just been so intense that it hurt to even remember. After that, she was transferred to the ward, and Harry was already standing outside the window, waiting for his daughter to be shown to him. "Look, it's your daddy." She brought the little bundle to the window. "And my husband just cried." He shouted words of gratitude and wiped his tears. That made 6 of us. Her friends and her husband greeted her after she was discharged. "Yes, we'll become relatives," laughed the girl's mother. "I don't mind," Carlos said. They went home and decided to organize a small table. Lucy was a quiet child. After she was fed, she fell asleep and let her parents spend a few hours with their friends. John was a little over a year old. The boy was curious about who was brought in and put in the crib. He stood looking at his future girlfriend. "Why, Lucy?" Selena asked. "I don't know," looked at her and realized that's what she was going to be called. Betty turned to her husband. "It's okay. It's a great name." He kissed her hands. After a brief sit-down, the friends left, leaving the young parents alone with the baby. Lucy was growing up, as on the first day she was very quiet, not crying much, only at night when it was feeding time. Now Selena and Betty were walking together in the park with their strollers. "We should get together," Selena suggested. Yes, her friend agreed with her. They were visiting with Betty and Harry. The friends were sitting on the couch watching John and Lucy discussing something on their own. The girl was still so young that she was babbling incomprehensible things, but the boys seemed to understand everything. Let them grow up together, and then they'll be together too. Carlos couldn't get enough of the children's play. "I don't mind," Selena said, just as she had at the maternity ward. "Neither do we," Harry turned to her. That's how the boys grew up, always close by. John went to daycare late. He was practically 3 years old. Betty had tried to find a place for Lucy too. Now the boy and the girl were in the same garden. Their mothers picked them up every day, and they walked home together. When it was time to go to school, Selena would not put John with her stream. They waited a year, and the kids walked to September 1 together. "We did it," cheered the moms as their kids walked to class with their teacher. Yes, they hugged. From that moment on, John and Lucy became inseparable. They sat at the same desk, went everywhere together. They were even teased as bride and groom. "How are you doing at school?" a mother would ask her daughter when she got home. "Not you, but you," the girl told her. She was in the 7th grade. "Good. How are you doing in school?" smiled the woman. She was pleased that they had once made the right choice. John was sticking up for Lucy now. He loved her and would never let her get hurt. "Everything is fine. Today I talked to Selena. He said that after school we'll get married right away," blushed the girl. "Where are you in a hurry ahead of the whole life?" Did not understand the mother, but did not have anything against it. They gathered with friends, the children together, they too. "You know what my daughter said to me today?" They were sitting around the table again. "We know. John pleased us too," laughed Selena. The husbands looked at each other. They too were supportive of the children. School was going great. The boy and girl didn't have to run anywhere. They often spent time at home. "Exams are coming up. Have you prepared?" Betty came into the room. "Of course," turned at the same time, guys. "Good, I believe in you." She walked out and they were alone again. At prom, everyone was together again. "Remember standing here with you when our boys went to 1st grade, whispered Selena to Betty. "Of course, it seems like yesterday to me." The woman brushed away a tear. "And now we're already seeing them off," sighed the other. "Nothing. I believe that everything will be fine." Their husbands joined them. That's how it was. When the official part was over and the graduates went to greet the dawn, John asked for silence on the bus. Everyone looked at him in surprise and fell silent. "Lucy," he knelt in the aisle by her seat, "will you marry me?" The classmates applauded. Some started whistling and hooting. "Of course I will." She hugged him and took the ring. John stood up. He hugged Lucy. Ever since he was a little boy, this boy knew that she would be his one and only and his favorite. They reached the place. Everything was calm and Jacoptic. The boys separated from the big company and spent time alone. Look, showed the girl the ring to her mom in the morning. Guys, why in silence? Why did not tell us anything? She took Lucy's hand and looked closer at the jewelry. I do not know, John so decided. Probably today we will gather, modestly answered the daughter. Okay, I'll go call Selena. The mother walked down the hallway and smiled. Everything was just as they wanted it to be. The families gathered together. They congratulated their children and rejoiced that they would soon be relatives. Well, shall we go? Lucy looked at her lover. It was only a few days before their wedding and they had a lot to do. Yes, nodded the boy. Everyone was busy with business. Lucy had taken her entrance exams only a week ago. John hadn't joined her. He was due to serve in the army. The wedding was in the last days of August. After that, Lucy started to prepare for her studies. John received a summons. It was not very happy news, but the guy did not show any sign. How am I here without you? She snuggled up to her husband in the evening. They were sitting at home in front of the TV. Lucy, you're at it again. He was nervous. What's the big deal if I'm worried? She looked up at her lover. You think I'm not worried? They talked about it every day, so the topic got a little tiresome. John, for some time before the draft, came to the same city where the girl studied. He didn't want to live away from his wife. Will you come with me, or by the weekend we'll be at your parents'? Asked her boyfriend, when before his departure was only a few days. Of course, I will go. She did not understand his question, because she loved him so much that she was ready to go to the army. The girl wrote a statement so that she would not be lost in her studies. The reason was serious, so no one would not interfere. Selena and Betty were crying. The fathers just kept silent. Friends gathered around the table, all raising their glasses and doing something. Dismissed early, Lucy and John went into the room. Will you wait? He looked at the girl. Why do you ask? Of course, yes, she kissed him. Tears rolled down from her eyelashes by themselves. Lucy couldn't help it. In the morning at the train station, she stood and stared blankly at the departing train. Don't worry, daughter. Time will pass quickly. We will support you. Her mother-in-law hugged her. Thank you. She turned away and walked away. Now the girl wanted only one thing, to go with her head into study, to do something, only if the hours and weeks would pass faster. Daughter, maybe you should move temporarily to a dormitory. Why spend money on rented accommodation? Her mother asked her. Yes, I also thought about it. There are girls there. Everything will not be so sad in the evenings. Lucy has already packed things for the move. Good, you're a good girl. The woman hugged her. John wrote often. In his letters he described where he was, what they were doing there. Lucy answered him with the same frequency. Why are you always sitting here like a mouse in a hole? The roommate came in after a walk. I'm studying. She pointed to her notes. I'm also studying, but you don't need to wave your hand at yourself. Come with us tomorrow. You'll have a good time, she suggested to her. I don't know what my husband will say. She looked at the sealed envelope that was to be sent tomorrow. I think he'll be all for it. Julia sat down on her bed. Okay, we'll see tomorrow, Lucy agreed. The next day in the evening, she and a few other girls went for a walk around town. They decided to sit for a while in the recreation area, which was in the very center. There was a fountain, of course. At this time of year it was not working, and a few benches, their girlfriends and occupied. Why did you get married so early? Julia asked the girl. I don't know, John wanted it that way, she answered. It is clear that nothing is clear, she laughed. Lucy heard the girl and looked around. She didn't know who knew her. Archie, she saw her classmate. How are you here? He came over, with a few other kids with him. I'm studying. Why are you here and not in the army? John's gone. She motioned for the boy to sit down. And I got in. I have a deferment. He looked at the girls. He remembered that he was not alone. I see. But my husband didn't want to, she said sadly. Oh yes, he's your husband. Archie remembered the proposal and the wedding. Yes, she noticed that the young men had approached the girls and were now getting acquainted. There's nothing to be bored of, the young man said cheerfully. Come with us. It'll be fun. It probably won't work tonight. Lucy turned to Julia, looking to her for support. Why not? The time is still childish. We'll have time for everything. The neighbor was already sitting next to the guy. Okay, the girl was not worried. Archie was a normal guy. He would not give her offense. That evening, they went to the young men's apartment. They rented it for everyone. The guys quickly organized the table. Funny dishes started to appear on it. Wine, melted cheese, bread, leftover sausage, buns, student kit. I'm so glad I met you today, served Archie a glass of Lucy's red liquid. I won't, she pushed the container away with her hand. Come on, here's to introductions, he insisted. The girl looked at the others. Everyone was having fun. They were already drinking heavily. Well, she took the glass. Archie raised his own. They silently touched, and Lucy took a sip. She had tasted champagne once before, when they had been married, so she didn't like the tart liquid. The girl wanted to put the glass on the table, but the guy didn't let her do it. In the evening, when it was already very dark outside the window, Lucy and Archie sat in a small room on his bed. The girl's head was spinning. She was smiling. Lucy, do you know how much I loved you at school? He whispered in her ear, hugging her himself. Archie, I'm married. She pulled his hands away. I know, and I'm not saying anything, but my husband's not around. His breath tickled her neck. It was funny. I'm not like that, she said in a slurred voice. Okay, I can wait. He kissed her cheek, then stood up, helped her up. Maybe we'll go to the dorm. We have school tomorrow. She saw Julia making out with one of the guys. Do you want me to walk you out? Archie asked her. Yeah, she wasn't going to stay here. They reached the dormitory without adventure. Archie hugged Lucy on the steps. I'll come back tomorrow. We'll go for a walk, he told her, his face so close it looked like he was going to kiss her. Lucy herself doesn't know what was wrong with her at that moment, but she wanted it. Archie touched her lips gently and let go. She walked into the building, went up to her room, lay in bed, and instantly fell asleep. In the morning, she walked to class and remembered what had happened yesterday. Why she acted like that, what she was missing. It was embarrassing. She had only met Julia at school, and she was cheerful. Are you going to the guys today? She asked her friend. No, the girl didn't want to. But no one considered her opinion. Archie came to pick her up in the evening. He was waiting for her on watch while she got ready. All day long, the girl knew she wasn't going anywhere in the evening. But as soon as she was told that a young man had come, she gladly began to get ready. Hi, she walked out to him. What took you so long? It's like a date, he laughed, and they walked outside. Lucy liked walking next to the strong and handsome Archie. Of course, she had no feelings for him, just friends. But the guy didn't understand that. He perceived her behavior as if she was flirting with him, and she'd agreed to go out. Archie, why? He brought her a huge bouquet of flowers. I just like to make you feel good. He hugged her and kissed her on the cheek. In her letters to John, Lucy never said a word about being in a relationship. They also corresponded, confessed their love to each other. Lucy wrote that she was waiting for him. And the new friend kept coming, bringing gifts, flowers, inviting her on dates, which Lucy took for simple meetings. Are you ready? He came for her again. Yes, she came out to him. It was already warm outside, so it was possible to spend time somewhere in a summer cafe. Lucy, I care about you. The young man took her hand. Archie, why, you know everything. She lowered her eyes and took his hand away. Perhaps your love with John is all far-fetched, he told her. That's enough. I'm going home. She still wouldn't look him in the eye. Okay, think about it. It turned out that they spent the summer together, and in September, they started to meet again in the city where they studied. We should celebrate our new year of study, Juliet insisted. I don't mind, Archie said immediately. They got together again at the guy's apartment. Wine, talking, laughing, dancing. Archie went to see Lucy off. As they walked past the park, he put his arm around her. What are you doing? She pulled his arm away. Lucy, stop breaking down. He was very drunk. Archie, stop it. I trust you as a friend. And you, she walked faster. What about me? The guy caught up with her and grabbed her arm. Nothing. She was trying to get away. Wait, why did you let me do all that then? He shouted in her face. What did I let you do? She really didn't understand. Taking gifts, going on dates, what? It was all for nothing. He couldn't calm down. Stop it. Let me go. She ripped my arm out and ran. No, I'm not letting you go that easily, he pushed her. Please, you've been so good, she cried. It's over, he pulled up her skirt. Bastard, she spat in his face. The guy stopped. The spit seemed to sober him up. He sat down on the pavement. At that moment, Lucy jumped to her feet and ran as fast as she could to the dormitory. Lucy, what happened? The janitor shouted to her. She saw that the girl's hair was disheveled and her sweater was torn, but she had already run away without answering her question. Archie didn't show up for a few days, probably because he was ashamed and Lucy didn't want to see him. The girl did not tell anyone anything, just stopped gathering company. Why weren't you with us yesterday? Julia asked her. Just did not want to, tried to look natural girl. Well, I see I'm not in the mood. I don't want to pester the neighbor. Archie showed up a week later. He called Lucy. She didn't want to go at first, but it was necessary to find out everything to the end. The girl came down to the watch. Let's go for a walk, her boyfriend called her. No, I'm not going anywhere with you. She remembered the last walk. Why, I love you, he shouted so that everyone paid attention to them. Enough, stop this concert. My husband is coming back any day now. She wanted to leave. You'll be sorry, he began to threaten. What can you do? Grinned the girl and went to her room. John wrote down the date he would be back. By this day, Lucy had arrived at her parents' house to meet her beloved husband with them. John got off the wagon all handsome. He walked up to his mother-in-law and wife. All together they went home to celebrate the meeting. The fathers were not at the train station. They prepared everything at home. When everyone was assembled, the questioning began. And the next day the guy and the girl went to the city. There they again rented an apartment. The guy wanted to enter at least a college, to have at least some education. How glad I am that we are together again, she hugged her lover. Thank you for waiting, he pressed her against him. For a week, everything was very good in the couple. On Monday, Lucy went to study. She had no premonitions. She sat out her classes. After that, she went to the store, bought groceries, and hurried home. Selena, I'm home, she shouted as she entered the apartment. She didn't hear a response. She walked into the room. The guy wasn't there and neither were his things. Lucy stood confused. She didn't understand what had happened. Please pick up the phone. She stood with the phone in her hands. Her husband was unavailable. She threw the phone on the bed. She herself buried herself in her pillow and started to cry. He couldn't go anywhere, only to his mom. The girl got out of bed, began to pack. Not a few hours later, she was in her hometown. Mom, did John come by? She asked from the doorstep. What are you doing here? A woman came out to her. Answer me? Lucy was waiting. No, what happened? Her mother was curious. I'll tell you later. I don't know yet. She went to her mother-in-law's. Aunt Selena, she knocked on the door. What do you want? John opened it. Please, love, explain what's going on. She wanted to hug him, but he pulled her arms away. Lucy, we're breaking up. He was very serious. What? Why? She sat down on the poof in the hallway, covered her face with her hands and cried. Here, this is not enough for you. He did not explain anything to her, threw an envelope in front of the girl. Lucy took the envelope, opened it. There was a letter and many pictures. The paper stated that she had been dating a certain Archie for a year. He gave her flowers, gifts, went out, kissed her. Attached to all this were photographs. One of her sitting on Vladimir's lap, another of him giving her flowers. Lucy threw it all on the floor. She cried even more, realized that the classmates so decided to get back at her. Selena, I'm sorry, but we had nothing. She approached her husband. Don't call me that. It was obvious he had no intention of communicating. I swear to you. Yes, we dated, we went out, but it never went any further than that. She was silent, remembering the night Archie had almost committed a terrible act. Why didn't you write to me about it? He's a friend of ours. I would have said you were in the same company, but you didn't. Why? He didn't look at her. I don't know. I didn't want to upset you. I don't need anyone else but you. She sat down next to him. No, I can't forgive that. The boy put his head down on his hands. But why? She was getting hysterical. It's a betrayal, he said quietly. John, I understood everything. I realized I only need you. She stood up, came up behind him and hugged him. Lucy, don't. He hasn't done anything. He's a scoundrel because I didn't go with him. He did that so you and I would break up. Lucy didn't want to tell him about that situation. I don't care which one of you, which one. He got up and went into the hallway. The pictures were still lying there. I'm not leaving until you forgive me, Lucy said. Well, you can settle down. You've been here a million times. You know what's where. The guy started to put on his shoes. And you. The girl cried again. And I need to think it over. He walked out and slammed the door. Not 15 minutes later, the door opened and Selena walked in. She saw the girl, the mess in the hallway, came up to her. What happened here? The mother-in-law asked. John left, slumped down in Lucy's chair. After that, they called Betty. She came over. Lucy told them everything. Yes, I know that she was in touch with this Archie. They even came to visit together, was surprised by the mother that her husband did not believe her daughter. Look what he sent him, showed the girl the pictures, chose the most provocative ones. The women read and looked at everything. So, now I'll call him. Selena got up and started dialing her son's number. What's he saying? Betty looked at her. Lucy, go home. He said he'll think about it. He'll come and talk to you. Selena spoke quietly and stroked her daughter-in-law's back. Do you promise? She raised her eyes to her. Yes, she kissed the top of her head. Lucy packed up and walked to the train station. She sat in the apartment again and suffered. How she wanted to find Archie now and tell him everything. But she knew how mean he was, so she didn't want to make things worse. The next day she was back at school. Every time she came home she hoped John had arrived, but he hadn't. Hi, he came after a month. John, she wanted to throw herself at him but didn't. She thought she would push him away. I came to talk to him. He came into the apartment. And that was it? Lucy felt like she was going to cry again. Let's see. He walked over and sat down on the couch. Ask me, I'll tell you everything. She sat down next to him. Tell me everything as it happened, her husband asked. And Lucy told for about an hour how it all began and how it ended. The only thing she missed was the story in the park. Why didn't you tell him you thought of him as a friend? The young man couldn't understand. How could I realize that he doesn't know it himself? She reflected. Yeah, you still have a lot of learning to do, he smirked. John, I swear to you that, between us, nothing happened. She moved closer to him. I believe you. He reached out and hugged her. Really? She snuggled in. I went out with him. He couldn't really say anything. And at the end, he admitted he was doing it out of spite. Just like you said. John leaned over and started kissing his wife. Lucy was glad that she and her husband were doing well. Now every morning she prepared his breakfast, went to study, and in the evening they had Jacoptic meetings. John went to school, at the same time went to work in the police. Lucy rejoiced in her husband's success. Darling, guess what? She was holding a small box. I don't know. He took the gift from her hands. Open it. She stood there without breathing. The young man opened the lid, looked first inside and then at Lucy. Is this what I think it is? He didn't want to get excited ahead of time. Yes, she clapped her hands together. Inside the box was a 2-strike pregnancy test and a pacifier. We love it. He stood up and hugged her. Afterwards, the young people informed the future grandmothers about everything. The latter were, of course, delighted. John continued to work. Lucy had only a few months to finish her studies. After that, she was not going to get a job anywhere because she would start her maternity leave. Wait, her husband pulled away from her. His phone was ringing. Okay, she went into the kitchen. Honey, I'm being paged. He's leaning over her from behind. What? It's your day off, she got upset. Yeah, but some thugs robbed the cash register in one of the villages. They were spotted and now they're inside shooting back. He was fully dressed. Be careful, his wife kissed him. He walked out of the apartment. Lucy herself doesn't know why, but she crossed him. She had never done that before. Lucy, the phone rang in the night. Yes, she didn't understand anything when she woke up. You can come to the hospital. John is hurt, a male voice told her calmly. Not understanding, she sat up in bed. Come, a silence formed on the other end. She didn't realize what she was doing. Rushed to the hospital. What? She expected to be led to John now. Those scumbags were shooting buckshot. He's been hit. He's unconscious now. Muttered what was probably a co-worker. Can I see him? Lucy asked. I don't know. He looked around, looking for a doctor. The girl was thrashing around the corridor. She couldn't gather herself. When the doctor came to them, he explained that the wound was serious. The shot could go in different directions. Lucy started calling her and John's parents. By morning, everyone was gathered. Selena was crying. No one was bothering her. For 3 long days, women and men took turns being on duty at the hospital. And on the morning of the 4th day, John died without regaining consciousness. Daughter, her mother called her. No, she screamed into the phone. Hold on, her mother tried to find words of encouragement, but nothing worked. I'm coming. Lucy wanted to get out of her seat and run to them. No, you don't have to. We'll be right there. Betty stopped her. Everyone was saddened by this sad event. They just sat there in silence. Lucy was staring at one point on the wall. She couldn't even move. Daughter, you don't have to be so hard on yourself. Your husband was a hero. Carlos sat down next to her. I know. Her voice was lifeless. The day of the funeral, Lucy went crazy. Nothing could stop her. She screamed like a wounded animal. And when no one was home, she even tried to kill herself. But her mother came back in time. Daughter, what are you doing? You have to live. You will have a child. She grabbed her and held her for so long until she stopped kicking. Mom, I can't do without him. He's my life, my love, the girl screamed. Everything will be fine. Remember that you'll have a little one soon. Then your brains will fall into place. That's how Harry caught them when he got back to the apartment. What? He didn't finish, she realized. The procession was very slow. So many people had gathered, colleagues, acquaintances, friends, relatives. They were really burying him like a hero. And only Lucy and Selena sat on the bench because they could not believe that their boy and husband were no longer in this world. I will always be with you. Lucy rushed to the grave. Her father managed to grab her in time. He was ready for it. When it was all over, she just fell on all those wreaths and flowers and sobbed in her voice. What can I do to help her? Betty looked at her husband. But at that moment, the girl was writhing in pain, and her mother noticed it and came running over. She's bleeding, the woman noticed. Hurry up and call an ambulance. The car arrived. The girl looked like a mad woman. The paramedics had to deal with her. When everyone arrived at the hospital, it was clear that nothing good to expect. And so it was. The doctor came out and told the family that the girl's baby was gone. Why did this happen to her, to our girl? Cried Beatty. The father was also somber. The girl is under sedation now, but in the evening you can pick her up, mumbled the doctor. Okay. Beatty looked at her friends. Unequivocally, we are taking her with us, said Harry. When her parents arrived in the evening, Lucy wasn't herself. She seemed to exist, but really everything inside felt like it had been scorched. When she arrived at her parents' house, all she did was lock herself in her room and sit there, tears flowing all by themselves. Daughter, you have to come to your senses, Selena told her. I understand that, but everything died inside me. Looked at her with colorless eyes. Daughter. Well, tell me, what do you see as a way out of this situation? The mother was ready to do anything to help her girl. I was thinking, maybe I should go somewhere. I will be distracted by my work. I will forget. Lucy turned away to the window. Of course, if it will make you feel better, then please, she went on all the girls' terms. Already the next day, Lucy began to pack. Her friend had long ago suggested that she go to work on a shift. And now she was finally right for it. Julia, is your offer still valid? Lucy called her. Yes, of course, we're always in need of hands, she said happily. Then meet me in a couple of days and I'll call you, Lucy decided. She sat at the table with her relatives. It was not as cheerful as it had always been. Selena supported her choice. She continued to socialize with Betty. Lucy slept very badly that night. She was plagued by nightmares. She dreamed of a girl who was reaching out to her and asking her not to leave. In the morning, the girl woke up in a cold sweat. Lucy left. She sat on the train, looking out the window and thought about nothing. At the station, she was met by Julia. The friends hugged. While driving to the place, the girl told everything that happened. She could only sympathize. Well, here we are. They got out near some building. Now Lucy had to live in the dormitory again. And again her roommate was Julia. Just like back at school, she smiled. Yes, Lucy shook her head. In the morning they went to work. The new girl had to learn everything. They had to work in the dining hall, washing dishes, floors, walls, and everything else. Sometimes she'd be asked to serve. It was understandable. Well, do you agree? Her neighbor looked at her. Yes, I have no choice. Lucy was ready for anything. The work was hard at first. When she got involved in the process, there was no time left at all. From the very morning until late in the evening, the girl was in the kitchen. She came home and just fell off her feet. But after she realized everything, she grew to her working time. Now she could have tea with the girls and go out in the evening. Let's go. There is a place where everyone gathers to spend leisure time. Julia called her when it had been a few weeks. Okay, Lucy wanted to go out. They packed up and set off on their adventure. Lucy knew that with Julia she was sure to find them. Oh, what beauties! They hadn't gotten anywhere yet and they had already been spotted. Two young men stopped to meet the girls. Hi, Julia said to them. What do you plan to do? The young men were curious. We haven't decided yet, the neighbor said honestly, and it was true. Come on, you can help brighten up our boring evening, they called the girls. Lucy said nothing, watching. They came to the local cafe, which was very small, but there were so many people here that it was strange how everyone got in. So here's to the meeting. The young men were fun. Let's get acquainted. The first thing Lucy said pleased everyone. That's right, the people in the room caught on. I'm Steve, and this is my friend Austin, now spoke the one who before that was also more silent. Lucy sat sad. She didn't want anything. Then Steve called her outside. Do you want to go for a walk? He was already giving her his hand. Okay, they went. The town was small. They came to a house. Would you like to come in? The new acquaintance asked. Why not? Lucy didn't care. They went into the place where Steve had rented a place. It was obvious that he was not alone. Wine? He pulled a bottle out of the cupboard. Come on, the girl agreed to everything. When the bottle was emptied, Lucy sat looking at the young man. Come to me. He held out his arms to her. She stood up and walked over, dizzy. It felt good because all thoughts had gone somewhere. Steve sat her on his lap and started kissing her. The girl liked it. She gave in to his caresses. She was staying with him that night. Wake up. You have to go to work. Steve woke her up in the morning. Her head hurt. It felt like it was going to fall apart. Yes, thank you. Lucy was embarrassed because she found 3 other males in the room. I'll come back tonight, the young man promised, but Lucy never met him again. What, are you waiting for him? Asked Julia. How is it that in such a small town, we have not met for several weeks? Did not understand the girl. They can come for a one-time job, pull a heating main or an electrician, and go to the next object, explained the neighbor. I see. Lucy looked at her hands, which had become rough from the detergents. They continued to get out with her friend. Lucy had already gotten into the work. In the 6 months she had been working here, she had not given up wine and men. Lucy, you weren't like this. What happened to you? Julia asked her. My problems. She didn't want to justify herself to anyone. Her mother called every day. Lucy sent her money and lied that there was a lot of work and she couldn't come home. Betty believed her, so she didn't say anything. And the girl went on with her life. Julia, are you coming today or not? She called her friend. Wait, she had a headache, so she couldn't get out of bed. Okay, I'll go then, slammed the girl's door. It wasn't often that they had time to go out, so she didn't want to waste it. That evening she met Sasha. He was so handsome and also brutal, it seemed to Lucy. They took a long walk, talked, and then went to visit him. He lived alone. That was good. Lucy and Alexander spent the night together. In the morning, Lucy went to her place. She no longer expected to meet the man, but he came the next day. You? The girl was surprised then. Why such a surprise? He did not understand. Simply, she was ashamed to admit it. Are you coming? He waited for an answer. Yes, this insolence and something else like Lucy and this man. Once again, they were at Alexander's house. Everything was going well. He was doing a lot for the girl. Julia, he asked me to live with him, Lucy told her friend in the evening. And you? She tensed up. Why, I'll probably agree. The girl was glad. He is some kind of murky, did not believe Alexander neighbor. You just don't know him. That's the first impression. Lucy was sure of it. It's up to you to decide. Her friend pressed her lips together. She didn't like it. Okay, don't be offended. She hugged and kissed her neighbor. took her suitcase, and left the room. From that moment, Alexander and Lucy formed a couple. They went everywhere together. Everything was fine. When the girl began to live together with Alexander, she began to notice that he was doing something illegal in addition to working here. One day, she decided to ask, but she was answered so rudely that she didn't even think about it anymore. "Why are your eyes red?" Julia noticed at work. "Don't mind her," Lucy turned away from her. "I see, she's hitting you," her friend guessed. No, she was telling the truth. It's just that she cried all night after a big scolding. "Okay, tell me if anything," continued the girl. With Sasha was difficult, but Lucy swallowed everything. After all, stability. She noticed that different people came to him. They talk about something, do something. But the girl didn't dare to ask about it anymore. "Lucy, aren't you going home at all?" Her mother asked her when she called. "Mommy, of course I'm going, but not now, a little later." She couldn't explain anything to the woman. "Who called you?" Alexander came up to her. "Mommy," she showed her phone. "I can also write Mom, and Angelica will call me," he spoke in a stern voice. "Are you jealous?" She laughed. It was the first time he had ever hit her. Lucy stood, holding her cheek, and looked at Alexander. No one had ever touched her in her life until that moment. "If you misbehave, you'll get another," he promised her. Why? She didn't deserve to be treated like that. "You asked me how many men you've had in all the time you've lived here, and now all they say is that I picked up the poor guy. If I'd known before, I never would have done such a thing." He clenched his fists. "That was before you," she thought. She was acting roughly now. That was it. The conversation was over. The man just walked out of the apartment. Lucy wanted to leave, but she was afraid. There was no one to complain to either. When she got to work the next day, she decided to share with her friend. Can you imagine the look on her face when she told her everything? "Report it," Julia advised her. "I'm scared," Lucy admitted honestly. "Do you want me to report it?" she suggested. "Try, but if he finds out, we'll be in trouble," her friend told her. "Don't worry, we've been in more trouble than this," she promised her. Lucy returned home. She was really afraid of her roommate, but she had nothing to do but wait. A week passed. Alexander came home. "Did you snitch?" He came up to Lucy and grabbed her by the chest. "What are you talking about?" She made big eyes. "You know what?" He gathered some things, then put a chair in the middle of the room and sat the girl down. "What are you doing?" She was shaking, scared. "You'll find out now," he grinned. Alexander tied her to the chair. He doused everything with a smelly liquid for fear. Lucy did not even immediately realize that it was gasoline. He took one more look at her. He flicked a match, threw it on, and closed the doors. "Help!" She began to scream with all her might. At that moment came the realization that she was not living right, but no one heard the girl. The house was old and wooden. The logs were quickly seized by the fire. Someone called the fire department. Lucy was panting. She rocked harder on the chair. She fell down. It was easier here, but she realized she was losing consciousness. When she was at her wit's end, she felt someone lift her off the floor. "Lucy!" She opened her eyes. Julia was sitting next to her. "Where is he?" The girl's first question was. "Don't worry, he's right where he needs to be," her friend reassured her. "Well and good." Lucy closed her eyes. "Imagine, you were right. He was doing all sorts of nonsense to destroy everything. Everything, and set it on fire so they wouldn't find it." Julia started whispering. "Yeah, and me for one," the girl cried. "All's well that ends well." The neighbor squeezed her hand. "What did the doctor say?" Lucy wanted to know. "Nothing happened to you, just smoke inhalation," the neighbor reassured her. "I want to go home so badly." The girl was still crying. "Everything will be all right," Julia nodded her head. Lucy was discharged. She immediately wrote a statement and went home. Now on the train the girl sat. She understood everything and realized that she had been bad. How could she have let John down like that? What had happened to her? "Mom," she walked into the apartment. The prodigal daughter had finally returned. Her father came out to meet her. "Where's Mom?" She came up and hugged Dad. "She will come now, in the store," he replied. It was nice and cozy at home. Lucy went to her room. Everything was so nice here. "Lucy?" Mommy asked from the hallway. Mom ran to her girl. "Hello, dear," Hector. They went into the kitchen. The woman put the kettle on and then began to assemble the table. "What a fool I was," Lucy said, looking at her mother. "Don't talk bad. You were stressed. You felt bad," the woman reassured her. "Yes, everything can be," her daughter agreed with her. Lucy decided to exhale a little and then start her life over again. She looked for job vacancies. Not 2 weeks later, she was invited to work. Where was it this time? Betty was sitting there knitting something. "Where I went to school," her daughter confessed. "Alone?" The mother looked down. For now, she went over and hugged her favorite people. "Good," her mother agreed with her again. Lucy took out the diploma she had once received, packed her things and left. She had rented an apartment on the phone. Now all she had to do was pay for it. She got the job. It was easy for Lucy. Lucy had done the right thing. Now she was working in the local hospital department as a nurse, but she liked it. "Lucy, would you like to take another job?" her boss asked her. "I'll have to think about it." She was just about to go home. She walked down the street and realized that there was never any extra money. "Hello." Lucy entered the chief's office. "Greetings. Have you made your decision?" he asked her. "Yes, I have," she smiled at him. "Then write your application and you can start work." He handed her a blank sheet of paper. Lucy realized that it would be very hard, but the money would come. She wrote everything and left the office. In the evening, she was at home, sitting and thinking about what would happen next in her life. "Lucy, you will pull all the veins out of yourself," Elizabeth told her. They met in the hospital. Now they began to communicate closely. "What can I do?" "No one can help me," she said. "Do you even have a rest?" her friend asked her. "When?" Lucy smiled at her. "I see, let's go out." Elizabeth suggested it. It was rare, but the girl thought that after the day shift, in the evening you can relax. And indeed, with Elizabeth, they could go to a cafe or restaurant, spend a pleasant time there, relax. "Oh, it's so good that you're taking me out." Lucy leaned back in her chair. What else do girlfriends do? She didn't understand. In this place, they liked most of all pleasant music, good cuisine, friendly staff. "Girl, can I ask you to dance?" A man approached Lucy. Of course, she looked at her friend and gave her hand. "Anthony," he introduced himself as they walked to the center. Lucy, it had been a long time since she had danced with anyone or socialized with the opposite sex. "You're a good dancer," he said. "You too." She didn't know what to say. "It was nice, thank you," he said at the end as he walked her back to her seat. "Well, what's going on there? Did you get to know each other?" Elizabeth started asking at once. "Yes," Lucy's face blushed a little. "And what then?" She waited. "Nothing. Thank you for the dance. You heard yourself." The girl raised her glass. But she was wrong. When they were about to go home, Anthony came up to them. "Can I walk such beautiful ladies home?" He walked in the middle. "Of course," smiled Elizabeth. She lived with the man, now taking care of her friend. They walked. There was a casual conversation. Elizabeth saw her boyfriend ahead, said goodbye and ran to him. "Where do you live?" Anthony asked. "Why are you calling me? I look so old," she asked him. "Sorry." He was embarrassed. They walked on. "There's my house." They walked up to the driveway. "Can we exchange phone numbers?" He tried. Yes, Lucy agreed. Anthony was a nice man. She walked home, feeling as if flowers were blooming on her soul. Anthony called the next day. Although Lucy was very busy, she took a moment to talk to him. He offered to meet, but she couldn't today. It was the night shift. "All I can suggest is that tonight you come here. I'll be out," she muttered. "Okay, that would be fine with me for starters." She could hear how pleased he was. Lucy didn't know if he would come or not, but she'd hoped he would. And he came, and not just for no reason, but with flowers. "God, it's been 1,000 years since anyone gave me flowers." She took the bouquet and smelled it. "It makes me feel good to do this," he smiled. From that day on, Anthony and Lucy started dating. When it was a day off, they would go to the park or just sit in the yard. The rest of the days, as it worked out. "Why do you live in a rented apartment? Move in with me," he suggested to her after 6 months of meetings. Would that be convenient? She was afraid. She'd already trusted him once. "What are you saying?" "Of course it would be convenient," he laughed. "I'll have to think about it." Lucy smiled. Of course, he understood that. Okay, I agree. Lucy thought to herself that she'd have found a real man. They started living together. Anthony was flying on wings. Why don't you have a rug in your house? Lucy asked him one day. I don't know, I hadn't thought about it. He looked at the floor, which was covered with linoleum. We should get some, she concluded. Suit yourself, he said, but he didn't offer to give money. Okay, Lucy isn't proud. She has enough. She'll do it all herself. In 6 months, she bought 2 carpets, bedding, a kitchen set, which was assembled by specially hired people. Could you do it yourself? The woman was surprised when she came home from work. You see, the hands do not grow from there. He waved his hands. After that, it was his turn to buy a bed, and then a large closet for clothes. Why are you doing this? Elizabeth asked her when Lucy was telling her. Why, I live there too. I want it to be comfortable. Lucy did not understand the question. Oh, you live like this with men, you invest in them, and then they leave you, Elizabeth sighed. At that moment, Lucy remembered Alexander, shrugged. No, Anthony is not like that. Elizabeth, can you lend me a couple thousand? I saw such a nice shirt. I wanted to buy Anthony, she asked her friend. What, you also dress him? She was amazed. What's the big deal? Lucy was amazed again. Did he buy you anything besides that broom on the first date? No, Lucy thought. Well, you're ready to try. All in your Anthony. He only did what he did to bring you to his place. She marveled at the woman's naivety. Come on, he does so much for me, Lucy said. Oh, you'll be on his side no matter what you say. She wouldn't lend money to her friend. Fine, I'll borrow it somewhere else, she said. She liked to come home, cook for her lover, and then lie in a warm bed. We're having guests over today, Anthony said. Good, it's the day shift. She came over and kissed him. Are you gonna get everything ready? He looked expectant. When I'll be at work all day, let's order in. She hoped Anthony would agree. Okay, just do it yourself. I don't have time, he went out. Elizabeth, would you like to join us today? She asked when she got to the service. What's the occasion? She was curious. Nothing, just Anthony invited some friends and I thought I'd invite you. She was scrubbing the floors and talking at the same time. Well, we'll be there tonight. My friend didn't mind. Lucy, as promised Anthony, ordered everything. She paid for the order. All that was left was to receive it at home. In the evening, she saw that many strangers had come. They were her husband's co-workers. As long as everyone was sitting at the table, talking and eating, everything was fine. But at some point, Lucy realized that the guests had had too much to drink. We should dance, Anthony said. Okay, one of the girls got up and turned up the volume. Won't the neighbors fight? Elizabeth asked Lucy. No, they are normal. The woman was sure of it. She went to the kitchen to get more snacks. Look, when she came back, her friend pointed with her eyes to a couple dancing. It was Anthony and that girl dancing. Fine, let them relax. Lucy waved them off. Yeah, if someone danced with Barry like that, I'd kill them. Elizabeth followed her friend. They sat down at the table, but Lucy couldn't help but stare at what her man was doing. They were wriggling so much, he touched the girl on every bulging spot she had. That's enough. She got up from the table and turned the sound down. What's the matter? The ones who were just bouncing on the carpet stopped. What are you doing here? She knew what she was doing was wrong, but she couldn't help it. Okay, what are you yelling about? Anthony said, and they giggled with the girl. And you still believe him? Asked Elizabeth as she put her coat on in the hallway. Stop it, Lucy interrupted her. Okay, your life, but I suggest you take a closer look, her friend warned her. Lucy returned to the room and the couple stood again, already without music, moving slowly. She saw Anthony hugging her as if he wanted to take her immediately. She got disgusted, turned away and left. She cried in the kitchen. All the guests had left, only this girl was left. Elizabeth was in pain. She started washing dishes to distract herself. She heard the front door slam, thought it was the girl leaving. Anthony? She went into the room, but there was no one there. She'd done so much for this union and he'd do this to her. She cleaned up, made the bed, and went to bed. He came in the morning, smelling someone else's perfume in the bed. Did you like it? Lucy turned to him. What? He wasn't quite sober yet. The broad, Lucy explained. Are you jealous? He chuckled. No, the girl lied. Well, sleep then. He turned on his side and sniffled. How to live after that? She just didn't sleep until morning. "Hi," she said hello to everyone when she got to work. "Why do you look so bad?" Elizabeth whispered to her. Not sleeping well, Lucy didn't feel like sharing her thoughts with anyone. "I see, I've made a mess of things," her friend guessed. "What should I do?" The girl almost burst into tears in response. "In the first place, leave one position, all the money you cannot earn, and you are not like a man," advised Elizabeth. "I've already thought about it," she nodded. Today, she went and wrote a statement. If Anthony was making a decent income, she would quit. She was so fed up. As the years went by, Lucy continued to live with the same Anthony. They were satisfied with their mutual neighborliness. There was no love lost between them. He went out without even hiding it. "What's wrong with me?" she asked him one day. "What kind of questions?" The man looked at her surprised. "Just leave it." She didn't want to continue the conversation. If he didn't understand, she didn't have to. "Lucy, you need another man," Elizabeth said. "You look at me. Who will look at me?" self-critically answered her friend. "You want to talk about yourself. You are still beautiful. Just a long time ago did not take care of themselves." The girl encouraged her as she could. "I did everything for him, and he is so," cried Lucy. "Everything. Do not regret anything. You still have everything ahead of you." Elizabeth hugged her. They continued to work. Lucy wondered why she had given up the night shifts. She didn't want to go home, but there was nothing to do, and she again went to an empty apartment where everything was well done. She was cooking dinner, and the man did not want to return there. "Where have you been?" She felt his cold body at night under the blanket. "That's it. Go back to sleep." He didn't turn to her. Tears choked. That night she decided everything. She went to work in the morning, spent half a day there, took a day off. She came home, packed her things. She couldn't stop the tears. "At first I wanted to write a note, but in the end I decided not to." She stopped, circled the nest she herself had made with a glance, turned around and left. "Hello," she came to Elizabeth. They had agreed that her friend would stay here for a couple of days. "Come in quickly." She didn't want to keep her guest on the doorstep for long. They sat for a while, cooked dinner, ate, and went to bed. Lucy did not want to disturb the couple, so she stayed out of the room until nightfall. "Lucy, go to the 8th room. A man needs help there," the head nurse asked her. She put a basin of clean towels on the table. She entered the room. He was lying on the bed. She did not understand whether the man was asleep or unconscious. Quietly, she approached the bed, checked the IV. Everything was normal there. Then she began to remove absorbent cotton, syringes, and other things from the bedside table. "Drink," she heard, and she was scared. Now she took a mug that was standing there, dipped the cotton swab, and moistened his lips. He licked greedily. "More?" he asked. "Yep," she repeated her movements. He wrinkled his nose and opened his eyes. The whites were red. The young man looked at Lucy. She blushed for some reason. He reminded her of John. She came over and sat on the edge of the bed, though it was not customary. "If you could say so." He could hardly even speak, but he tried to smile. "Soon you'll get better and you'll be as good as new," Lucy reassured the young man. "Your words would be." He began to cough. The girl quickly approached. "You don't have to talk much." She lifted his head to make him stop. "Elizabeth, have you seen the patient from the 8th? She asked her friend in the corridor. "No, why?" She turned and looked at her in surprise. "I don't know, but when I saw him, something inside clicked," Lucy admitted. "That's a good sign," Elizabeth laughed. She decided to find out a little about who was in their facility. She asked this one, that one, the other one, the third one, and gathered a lot of information and gossip. Already in the evening, when they came home, Elizabeth called Lucy into the kitchen. They needed to talk. "What are you suddenly in the middle of the week?" The girl looked at the bottle of wine that stood on the table. "We need to talk about something," Elizabeth said cryptically. "Okay." Lucy took the glasses and poured ruby liquid into them. "Listen, your new acquaintance is not simple." The hostess cut the cheese. "I don't even know his name. Only later I realized that I could look it up in the medical records." She blushed again. "I don't know if it's true or not, but a lot of people say about him that he doesn't do the right things." Elizabeth lowered her voice. "What kind of things?" Lucy asked in a whisper, leaning over the table. Both laughed afterward. No one was home and they were vociferating. "I do not know," said her friend seriously. but he is not in our hospital because he fell down the stairs. Why are you telling me all this? I'm not going to do anything. Lucy took a sip of wine. Yeah, I can see you sitting there, blushing and turning white. The girl smiled. Well, enough. Time will tell, you know. He reminded me something of my first husband. Immediately became sad eyes. Then I see Elizabeth guessed why everything is so. They sat until the husband of the friend came. Then they fed Sergei dinner, talked, and went to their rooms. In the morning, Lucy got up. Her mood was very good. For the first time in a long time, she sat in front of the mirror, made her hairstyle, made up her eyes. When she stepped out into the hallway, Elizabeth gasped. Lucy, you're so? She stopped talking. Like what? She smiled. I don't know, gentle, beautiful. They left the house and headed to their work. Lucy didn't wait to be asked or forced to go to room number 8. She went there herself. The first thing she did today was look at the medical history. She took it and looked at it like she was looking at what the patient had been prescribed. She read that his name was Jacob. She glanced out the window and said the name to herself again. What are you hanging out there? He's been looking at her for a few minutes now. I see you're feeling better, she said sarcastically. Give me a drink, he said sharply, and because his voice was hoarse, it seemed to be rude. Now, a little offended Lucy, she went to the nightstand and gave him a glass of water. Thanks, Sardi. He handed her back the empty glass. It's okay, she headed for the exit. Sit with me, the young man said in a different tone. What? She stopped at the door. Lucy heard everything, but she wished he would ask again. Stay with me. He didn't refuse her. Okay, she smiled, but when she turned to him, she was completely serious. Lucy walked over to the bed, pulled up a chair and sat down on it. Tell me about yourself. He lay on his back and looked up at the ceiling. My name is Lucy. I work here. She shrugged because she didn't know what to say next. Husband, kids? He turned his head slightly in her direction. Just like that, her cheeks began to blush again. Why, are there any secrets? He grinned and then grimaced. No, Lucy was confused. I'm just kidding. My name is Jacob, and I'm not really into anything, so I came to you for a while, he said. Nice to meet you. The girl was embarrassed. It was obvious that he was getting better because he was already joking and talking a lot. That's what the girl told the doctor when she left the room. She could not wait to meet Elizabeth and tell her everything that had happened, but they didn't meet until the evening when they went home. Look, I promised I'd stay with you for a couple days, but it just so happens that I wasn't even looking for anything. Lucy looked at her friend. You what? Do not even think about it. Live as long as you want. You do not embarrass us, sincerely said Elizabeth. And we made friends today, bragged Lucy to her. With whom? She didn't understand because she was quick to change the subject. Jacob, Lucy laughed. Jacob who? She still couldn't understand. What Jacob could Jacob be like? The sick one from 8th grade? Lucy laughed, offended because that was all she could think about. Oh, that's what you mean. Elizabeth laughed at the fact that she hadn't realized it for so long. Yes, he told me about himself. I did the same and all. We are already friends. She recalled how it was. Actually, you can't flirt with patients. Elizabeth wagged her finger. I know, and I don't flirt. The girls were in high spirits. At home, it was business as usual. Lucy couldn't wait to go to bed. She wanted it to be morning already, and she wanted to be by his side. She was going to work alone today. She told Elizabeth that she would get out early to go to the store. No one had come to see the young man in 2 days, so she decided to make him happy with something. Lucy bought some fruit and juice and headed for the hospital. Here I am, she slipped into the room. Hey, he was already half sitting up on the pillows. Look what I brought you. She started to put everything she bought on the nightstand. And why? He looked at it all. To make you happy. She didn't understand his mood today. Okay, he smiled at her, just like last time. After that, they ate oranges, talked and laughed. It's all you was the only thing he kept saying. After that, Lucy started giving Jacob massages. Several times each day she went up to him for it. He would yell, but she ignored it. They were getting up, taking their first steps. In 6 months, Jacob was standing on his own feet. He looked at the girl with great love and gratitude. Would you be my wife? He asked her at breakfast. Do you honestly want that? She couldn't believe she was sitting here with him. as if all those years she'd spent in a bad relationship hadn't happened. "What are you talking about? Of course you do. You are the kindest and most loyal girl." He got up from his seat and, leaning on his cane, walked over to her. "Yes, I want to be your wife," she blushed. "Then you will soon have the best wedding ever." He went to the seat. They were no longer in their 20s, but much more, but they were both young at heart. At the wedding were invited parents. Did not forget Lucy and Selena and her husband, who were happy for her. In addition, the former mother-in-law confirmed that Jacob is very similar to John. The friends had a nice celebration. The bride and groom were happy. "How are you doing with him? Is he good?" Elizabeth asked her. "Very good. You have no idea how caring he is," Lucy said and looked at her husband. "Didn't it seem to you that he only needed you when it was bad?" Her friend began to doubt again. "Look, we've been through so much together. I don't think he proposed for nothing." Lucy didn't believe it. "I wish it were so," Elizabeth even spat. The guests left and the young people were alone. Jacob wasn't quite well enough to do business again, so he spent a lot of time at home. So far, so good. But as he got stronger, he started to disappear from home. At first, he tried to come home every day, but it was not very convenient for him, so after a while Lucy slept alone. The girl had nothing to do. She called her friend Elizabeth. "Oh, that again? You have nothing to do?" She was upset for Lucy. "No, everything is fine. Now he will catch up with what he missed while he was sick, and everything will fall back into place," defended her husband's wife. "We'll see." Elizabeth didn't believe anything anymore. And indeed, Jacob, not 3 months later, was right at home. Lucy wondered very much what was wrong. "Why are you always at home? What about your work?" She wanted to know everything about the man she loved. "Don't ask unnecessary questions. If I'm at home, it's necessary," he told her rudely. Lucy did not interfere. She remembered what had happened when she had interfered in the affairs of her roommate. She was pleased that they were always together, of course. Jacob didn't spend every minute with her the way his wife would have liked. "Why can't I go to work?" she asked her husband, bored at home. "No, you won't," he said imperiously. "Can I at least go to a friend to visit?" She could not sit in 4 walls. "No, I need you." He took her hand and sat her on his lap. That made Lucy melt. She didn't need anything else. After a short time at home, Jacob started leaving again. He could be gone for a week or more. Lucy was jealous, worried. "Come and visit and we'll talk," Elizabeth urged her. And if her husband came back, she didn't want to upset him. "Oh, so sit with your husband," she said, as if offended. Jacob never showed up. A day later, Lucy got a call from the hospital, her heart sinking. She pulled herself together in a minute and drove to her lover's house. He was bleeding internally. What had happened? No one would explain. "Beloved, come to your senses." She sat beside his bed after the operation, but all she got in response was silence. Again, a couple weeks in hospital and then bed rest at home. Lucy was there for him. Porridge, broth, medication. She could stay up nights because Jacob wasn't feeling well. "Okay, I've got errands to run." It's been a month since he got out of that hospital bed. Lucy disappeared into Jacob's room for most of her working hours. After a week, the doctor gave him permission to get up, but he couldn't do it himself, so Lucy helped him. She walked with him first around the room, then in the hallway as well. Jacob said nice things, thanked her. A month passed very quickly, and during that time the young people became friends and they said goodbye very warmly. "Will we meet again?" The girl didn't want to let him go. Of course, he promised and got into the car that came after him. Lucy was sad. She looked after the departing car and almost cried. "How are you?" Elizabeth came up behind her. "Everything is fine," blinked the girl, and a tear fell treacherously on her cheek. "Come on," her friend took her hand and led her back into the building. Lucy continued to stay with Elizabeth. After she told her to live as long as she wanted, she hadn't even thought about it. Now she realized she had to look for an apartment. "What are you doing? You've been living for so long. You don't need to move out," began to persuade her Elizabeth when her friend told her about it. "I don't know, I still feel uncomfortable." Lucy was telling the truth. "It's fine, trust me. I would have told you right away," the girl assured her. Lucy waited for him, but he didn't come. It was a shame. A month passed, the second, and Roma was still not there. Enough waiting. Her girlfriend pitied her. You know, I try to talk myself out of it, but I can't, Lucy told her then. Another month later, a car pulled up to the hospital. I need Lucy, a young guy ran in. Now, Elizabeth met him, went to look for her friend. Hello. The girl came out into the lobby. She was very surprised that someone was looking for her. I need you. He showed her the car. The girl's heart beat faster. She had really waited for him. She turned to her friend, who looked surprised at everything that was happening. Let's go, Lucy said confidently. They climbed into the parlor. The guy there said Jacob wasn't feeling well and he'd sent him here for her. Excitement set in. Let's go, the girl said confidently. They drove off. Elizabeth stood at the window and saw everything. She was worried about her friend because she did not say anything, where she went, where to look for her in case of emergency. What happened to him? Lucy worried in the car. You'll see, it was obvious that the guy was focused on the road. They arrived somewhere outside of town, there to a house that was surrounded by a fence. The girl got out of the car, waiting for the doors to open so she could get in. She was led into the house, escorted into a room. Jacob was in bed again. He was asleep. Hello, she said loudly to make him wake up. Lucy. He opened his eyes and mumbled her name. What happened to you? Why didn't you come? She walked over to his bed. He moaned. Now she looked at the medication that was lying here. She decided to give him a painkiller. Don't, asked the doctor. He shook his head. Where is he? She rushed to the door, stepping out into the hallway. There she was shown to a room with a man in it. Are you the doctor? She turned to him. Yes, is something wrong? He got up from his chair. He's in pain, she pointed to the wall. Now he came out of his and went into the room where Jacob was lying. He saw that one of the medicines had been set aside. I wanted to give it to him, but he wouldn't let me. He sent it to you, Lucy admitted. Do you have a medical degree? The doctor turned to her. Yes, I'm a nurse, she nodded. Good, you wanted to do the right thing. You have to trust. The last words were addressed to Jacob. Thank you, Lucy said quietly. She stayed to live in the house. She called Elizabeth, told her to write a statement for her. After that, she alerted the management, and they went along with it. She sat by the bedside of a man she really liked. Lucy didn't know why she was willing to do anything for him. She gave him compresses, turned him over, gave him shots, IVs, whatever she had to do. Thank you. He took her hand and pulled her to him. Anyone would have done the same. She tried to say something. Because her heart was pounding, she was worried about being so close to him. No, he looked into her eyes and then pulled her close and kissed her. Lucy realized she loved this man. Let's try to get up. He'd been sitting up for a while now, but the bones were shattered. They'd been put back together piece by piece, so it wasn't a given that he'd be able to do anything. Probably couldn't, he doubted. But Lucy took his hands, one placed on her shoulders. The young man managed it. He stood by the bed for only a few seconds, then sat back down. There, she was breathing hard because it was a little hard. Be careful, his wife saw him off. She, as in other years, was alone in the house. There was a different kind of joy now. The husband had hired a housekeeper, whom Lucy liked to talk to. Naomi, still have time to do everything. Let's have lunch. She invited her assistant to the table. I can't do that, she made big eyes. What's the big deal? Lucy didn't understand. They sat down at the table, talked about a lot of things, mostly about life. Naomi told about her difficult fate. So Lucy opened up to this woman. Of course, it hadn't happened the first day they met. It had been a couple years since she'd been employed there. Jacob came home very rarely, and he and his wife practically stopped communicating. Lucy would rush to meet her lover when he showed up, but he'd say he was tired and wanted to go to bed. And in the morning, he'd disappear again. Jacob, I need to talk to you. Lucy told him seriously when their marriage was 8 years old. Can you do that? He even stopped. Don't you believe it? The woman was so fed up with everything. She was kind of married and kind of not. She wanted clarity. Tell me, he exhaled impatiently. What's going on with you and me? She asked him forehead to forehead. Nothing, he smirked. That smirk of his had attracted Lucy so much before, but now it pissed her off. Jacob, I'm your wife. I've been sitting here alone for years, and you won't let me go anywhere, she cried. And you remember who you were, where I got you out of, and all you can do is look after me. I've got another family, a kid. Yes, I'm married to you, but I'm fine there. You're just a backup. He said all this to her face and left the house. What? She stood there confused. Lucy went to her room, cried a lot. Naomi came over in the evening. She wanted to talk to someone, but the woman couldn't leave the room. Her heart was breaking into pieces. Strangely enough, Jacob came the next day. He went straight to Lucy's room. He sat down on a chair. What? She didn't understand. She'd had a sleepless night, so her head wasn't thinking straight. Who were you before? How did you try to organize your life? He waited. I don't understand, she thought to herself. How could he know all this? Don't talk to the servants. He guessed what she was thinking. Understandable. She looked down at the floor. It was embarrassing if Naomi also exaggerated everything. So, did you make free love? He leaned toward her. Jacob, she didn't want to talk about it. It was a long time ago and not true. Lucy wanted to forget it all like a bad dream. Jacob, what? He jumped to his feet. It was all long before she met you. She tried to speak calmly so as not to irritate the man. Yes, and being told that my wife is an easy woman, it feels good. He grabbed her arm. It hurts me. She started to get scared. Me too. He looked at her and breathed heavily. And what are you going to do now? She couldn't think of anything, only of that grip that clenched tighter and tighter. You don't need to know that. He shoved her so hard that she fell on the bed. Lucy cried, and he gave her a look as if he'd spat at her and walked out. In the evening, Lucy thought of nothing better than to get even. She was alone, pulled a bottle of hard liquor and pills from the bar. Everything was in front of her. Why would she want this life? Everything is wrong and everything is wrong. She's only ruining things for others, her parents, her friends, her men. She poured into a glass, poured in a handful of pills. When she drank the bitter medicine, she felt immediately dizzy. Lucy knew the effects would come quickly. As she was passing out, she saw the front door open. She remembered nothing else. Lucy, she heard, her consciousness was badly clouded. For the first few seconds, she didn't realize where she was or what had happened to her. But it all came. She squeezed her eyes shut, though she hadn't opened them yet. Why couldn't she even die properly? Thank God she woke up. Elizabeth was standing over her. Jacob was beside her. What's wrong with me? Lucy realized that she hadn't gone to the other world, but it couldn't be without a trace. It's okay. Her friend stroked her head. Nothing is good. Neither are the brains in your head. What? Afraid to take more so I can come and feel sorry. He spoke in a tone that made Elizabeth want to punch him in the face. I'm sorry I didn't. Lucy closed her eyes. The man left. The friends were left alone. Tell me the truth, Lucy cried. You have pinched some nerves in your face and also in your neck, but also in general. Your body is poisoned, said her. They left the hospital together, Elizabeth carrying her friend in a wheelchair. Afterward, Jacob put her in the car, and they drove off. At the house, Lucy saw young people, a guy and a girl. She wondered who it could be. They rent an apartment here, he explained. What about me? She wondered. It's okay. They'll be patient, and when they get ready to buy, we'll decide. It was agreed that the young people would try to live in the private sector, and if they liked it, they would buy the house. No one warned them that the landlady would be ill, but the owner assured them that she would not interfere with them. So they did. It was so cold in the room, but Lucy was too shy to ask anyone for anything. She pulled several blankets over herself. She went out to the kitchen, ate something. The young neighbors looked at her, tried to talk, but the woman didn't meet it. Lucy, can I help you? A girl came up to her when she was going to the kitchen again. You have your own life. I don't want to disturb you, she said. Would you like to go for a walk? You're always in the house? Maria asked her. If it's not too much trouble, help me get dressed. Lucy was ashamed, but she hadn't breathed fresh air in months. Of course, Maria did as she was asked. Lucy went out of the house, told the girl that she could handle it from there, and she promised to follow her in a few minutes. It was freezing, and it was cold to be outside for long. Lucy didn't want to be followed, so she presumptuously went into the back of the lot. There she sat for a while, and when she felt herself freezing, she got up and walked back. But the woman did not calculate her strength. She slipped and fell. It is not known how much time passed while Maria was looking for her. What are you doing? You'll catch cold. Maria found her at last. Thank you, cried Lucy. She lay in her room, tears running down her cheeks. Already during the night, Lucy had a fever. It was hard for her to breathe, but the woman didn't call anyone. She was ashamed that she had to ask strangers for help. Lucy, how are you feeling? Maria came into the room. I'm fine, she wheezed. What are you talking about? You have a fever. She went over and touched her head. An ambulance was called and the woman was rushed to the hospital. Bilateral pulmonary edema. They put her in the ward, and then there were several weeks of treatment. Lucy had a long time to recover from this condition. Maria and Elizabeth came to visit her. Thank you, the woman cried. Her friend offered to call her mother, but Lucy was against it. It was not easy for her. What are you saying? Anyone would do that. She recognized herself in Maria. When she felt better, she was allowed to go home. Jacob, hello, Maria called him. We agreed to buy the house from you. He arrived and saw his wife lying in bed. She had lost a lot of weight and her face was distorted. I'll leave her here and file for divorce. Don't worry, she won't live longer than a year. But for that, I'll give you a discount. He looked at the future owners of the house. How can you do that to a person? Maria didn't understand. You do not know how she acted. He scheduled a meeting for tomorrow to draw up the documents and hand over the money. How are you? A girl came into the room in the evening. Why did you agree to leave me here? Lucy asked, while she thought, if it weren't for this, where would she go? She didn't want to be a burden on her mother's shoulders. I talked to my father. He said he would help you in your treatment. Maria sat down next to the bed. She smelled of kindness. What are you saying? I don't need anyone's help. Lucy made a face that made Maria laugh. You do not need to know that. You are still very young. Everything will get better. And people like your husband, you just need to throw aside. Maria saw without any stories what kind of man he is. Lucy was grateful to the girl. She lay back and smiled to herself. Living so many years with a man under the same roof, he offered her money to buy things in the stores. Why did she always refuse? She should have taken it and saved. Now at least she would have a financial cushion. It's nothing. Maria looked after a woman. Her husband, Mickey, Lucy didn't see often. But when she needed his help, he was there for her. You become like a mother to me. The girl hugged her sometimes. You grew up without her? The woman guessed. Yes, she left us when I was not even 3 years old. It seemed that Maria was going to cry. Gone somewhere or not at all? Lucy asked cautiously. Not at all. A tear rolled down her cheek. I'm sorry, the woman squeezed her hand. It's okay, I don't remember her at all. The girl wiped her tears and smiled again. Lucy decided that she would try, recover, and help Maria in any way she could. But time passed and it did not get better. The cough that used to choke her was much less now. And we have guests. Maria came to a woman's room. Who? The woman tensed up. More than anything else in the world, she was afraid of the arrival of her mother, that when she saw, she would not listen to anyone, just take her home. And Lucy could not afford that. Allow me to introduce Nani. A man entered the room. He had gray hair, but he didn't look old. Jacket, pants, boots, and most of all, Lucy noticed the perfume. She knew it wasn't cheap. Hello, she said quietly, trying to cover her face. You know, Lucy, as much as I've heard about you, it seems like I know you personally. He walked over and shook her hand. Why this officiousness? Just Lucy. She felt the redness coming to her face. Okay then, I'm Nani. He looked at her. Rays of wrinkles diverged from his eyes, but that only adorned the man. They talked some more and then Maria invited them to the table. Lucy didn't want to go, but Nani insisted. He helped her up. The woman threw on a robe. I'm sorry I'm like this. Lucy imagined herself, her hair tousled with grain, herself in some kind of robe. What are you talking about? You're sick. We'll sit at the table, and then we'll get you back to bed. He walked very quietly and supported her. Maria did her best. There was nothing on the table. Everyone sat down at the table and talked a lot, including the treatment. I can't agree to this. She looked at Nani. At that moment, she felt that he was not looking at her as a weak and sick woman. Okay, I'll lend you the money after I can. You pay it back in installments. He tilted his head to the side, waiting for her answer. Are you sure it will help me? Her head was involuntarily tilted this way. I'm 200% sure. He raised his wine glass at something else and drank. I guess I'll be going. Lucy started to get up. No, we're going for a little walk now. Nanny stood up and gave the lady a hand. But me, she pointed to her robe again. That's okay. Here's the coat. He pulled out of the closet. We won't be long. They went outside, stood there for a while, both of them being silent. It was a pleasure to chat. He walked her to her room. We didn't even talk. She smiled her crooked smile. You know, sometimes even being quiet with someone is good. He took her hand, kissed it, and left. Lucy sat on the bed, looking at the closed door. That's why, when she had become so helpless and ugly, she had met a decent man. Not wanting to think about it, she picked up a book and started reading to ward off the bad thoughts. Maria saw Lucy off to the clinic, which her father had paid for. Elizabeth volunteered to accompany her, to be there for her if needed. You don't realize what an amazing man he is, Lucy told her on the road. You know, the fact that he gave money for treatment, yes, but you have to look at him. Again criticized another man, Lucy. You can always tell at first sight, squinted her friend. Yes, but this one doesn't seem to have any flaws. Elizabeth couldn't believe herself when she said that. They arrived at the clinic. There the women were placed in a room. Elizabeth had an extra place. The treatment began. Lucy underwent 3 surgeries in total. The doctors tried to relax her muscles. Whether it worked or not, it will be seen when the rehabilitation course is over. Elizabeth, help, Lucy asked. It was not easy for her. Her face was in bandages. She couldn't even drink properly. Now call right away. That's what I came here for. She jumped up from her seat. You know, I thought I'd call my mother, Lucy said one night. Don't you think it would be a shock to her? She's not a girl anymore. Elizabeth was worried about Betty. I don't know, but for some reason I feel like doing it now. Lucy wanted to cry, but the doctor said she should do it less often. Well, let's wait a couple more days, or in general, discharged and go straight to her, offered options Elizabeth. Soon, you'll find out. Just wait a bit. He drove on. The car stopped outside the restaurant. The man got out, opened the door on Lucy's side, helped her out. Mickey and Maria were waiting for them on the porch. Daddy, the girl wanted to say something, but the man put his finger to his lips. Why are you all like this? Lucy looked at Mickey, who seemed as confused as she was. They walked to the lounge and sat down at a table. Lucy, when Maria started telling me about you, you reminded me of a woman. I couldn't believe it until I saw you. He put a photograph on the table. Lucy took it. There was a young woman who looked just like her. She was wearing the same blue dress at the time it was taken, and her hair was the same. I mean, you turned me into her. It was a little uncomfortable. No, it was just love at first word, not even a look. Tears appeared in Nanny's eyes again. I like you too, the woman told the truth. Then let's drink to that. They'd all raised their glasses, except Maria. What are you doing? Her father looked at her. I can't, she looked at her husband. What? I'm going to be a grandfather? Nanny was happy. Yes, she looked at Lucy, and you, a grandmother, if you agree. Of course I would agree. The atmosphere was very familial. They had a wonderful evening. After that they got into their cars and drove home. When they stopped at one of the intersections, Lucy noticed a familiar silhouette in the car next to her. It was Jacob, and as soon as he felt someone looking at him, he turned around. The woman smiled. She could see the man's face start to turn white when he saw her in the nice car, next to the imposing man beside her. Will you marry me? Nanny asked her at that moment. Yes, she smiled. She had finally found the happiness she had been searching for all of her life. Okay, as always, your take. Smiling was also contraindicated for now. Lucy studied hard. She didn't want Nanny's money to go to waste. She did everything the doctor said. Finally, it was time to remove the bandages. Lucy looked at herself in the mirror and couldn't believe it. Yes, her head was slightly tilted to the side, but now only she noticed it, and most importantly, she could control it. But the distortion of facial expressions wasn't what it used to be, especially since the surgeon had said that as she practiced daily, it would go away completely. I can't believe it, she looked at her friend. And he did it. Everyone wanted only to cripple you, but he cured you. Elizabeth raised a finger up. It was necessary to stay here a little longer. Elizabeth was told that Lucy no longer needed an escort. She had to go home. What a pity that you and I are not back together, the friends hugged. Come, let's go to mine, reminded Lucy of her friend's promise. I will. She kissed her on the cheek and left. Lucy had time to think. After all the treatments and everything else, she would lie on the bed or sit by the window and look out there. There were only good thoughts in her head. She thought that even as she left Mickey and Maria, she would never forget them. When the girl gives birth, she could stay with her grandchildren. The door opened a little. Yes, Lucy wondered. No one had come to see her at this time already. She looked around, saw Nanny. Madama, he spread his arms to embrace the woman. I think you're flattering me a little. She stood up and walked towards him. No, I never lied to anyone, nor do I say flattering words. The man hugged Lucy, and then they sat down right there in the ward. I'm glad of that fact. She looked at him. He was handsome. Lucy began to imagine what he must have been like when he was younger. He must have had a lot of girls. Listen, you're being discharged in a couple of days. I want to pick you up myself and surprise you. He didn't say what. Okay. She didn't understand why she needed permission for that. Promise that I'll do everything the way I want, and if you don't like it, you'll fix it, he said, and then didn't look her in the eye. For what you've already done to me, I'll be grateful to you for the rest of my life. She pointed at her face. Deal. Then he took her hand as he always did, kissed it, and left the room. It was nice to be cared for by someone other than yourself. Lucy waited to be discharged, and it came, just like Nanny had said, 2 days later. Hey, he was alone. I thought Maria would be with you. The woman was surprised. Let's go. Remember, I promised you a surprise, the man reminded her. Yes, I'm very curious what it will be. She got into the car. First in line was the beauty parlor. Why? She turned to him. She realized she didn't look good, but she could do it herself, but later. Quietly, he put a finger to his lips. You promised. Lucy went. Nanny waited patiently in the car. Her hair was colored, styled. The woman's eyes looked immediately younger. After that, a little makeup. She walked to the car. She felt like she had been transformed into a queen. Beautiful. Nanny couldn't help but compliment her. Where to now? She turned to him. To the store, the man said confidently. You're so crazy. She shook her head. You'll understand everything later. He spoke in riddles. Several dresses were already ready to be tried on when Lucy went in there. She wore them all. They were all gorgeous. But she chose one, the blue one. She liked that color so much. As she walked to the car, Nanny almost cried. What's going on with you? She couldn't understand. Where did you get this? Veronica asked her daughter. She lost the power of speech for a moment, but when she tried to pull herself together, her tongue continued to disobey, and the woman's legs were shaking. She sat down on the couch, looking in horror at the gift Selena had given her. Bought at the flea market, the girl replied, placing a vase of snow-white peonies on the table with her beloved mother's gift. The girl turned around and saw that her mother had opened the box and looked at its contents with an incomprehensible look. And what happened? What's inside, Ma? Sitting down next to her mother, she began to look at the gift. The day before, Selena had not had time to look at it properly. The wooden casket was quite old, and all of its surfaces were carved. It looked like it had once been decorated with stones, but now there were only empty hollows. Why are you so scared? Mom asked Celine. I thought you would like my gift. You love all sorts of vintage things. Daughter, look what's inside, Veronica said in a stony voice. The girl took the box from her mother's hands and looked inside. There were pictures. Taking a closer look, Selena looked at her mother incomprehensibly. They were pictures of her father, who had died in a car accident 10 years ago. But the most amazing thing was that the girl had never seen such pictures before. They were fresh photos, taken recently. How can this be, if her father has been resting in the grave for 10 years? So Dad is alive? She asked her mother. I don't understand anything either, replied Veronica, but one thing is clear. The photos were taken after his death, however unbelievable it may sound. But I was at the funeral with you. I saw how the coffin with your father's body was lowered into the grave. How you cried, throwing a clod of earth into the grave. How could he have gotten out of there and come back to life? We have to figure it all out, Mom said. And who did you buy it from? Selena told her mother how she walked from the institute the usual way through the bazaar, where the inhabitants were selling various junk. She was immersed in her thoughts, as it was the last academic year of the university. The institute was noisy. Students gathered in clusters in the corridors, sharing news and plans. Selena stood at the window with her friend Catherine and her boyfriend Ivan. She hadn't seen the young man all summer. He was away on a job. Selena and Evan had been friends since high school. As a boy, Evan fell in love with Selena and even enrolled in the same institute with her to always be close to her. Last year, he offered her to live together. Inherited from his grandmother, the guy got a small studio apartment. Housing could not be called very comfortable and prestigious, but the apartment was near the institute, and Selena's family lived on the outskirts, from which it took more than an hour to get there. But recently, they began to have frequent conflicts and misunderstandings. Evan became friends with guys and girls from the oil faculty. Most of them were from rich families, very well dressed, always had money. In an effort to fit in with his friends, Evan started working more than studying. Selena had to do his notes for him to solve problems. She reassured herself. Even works so that we have something to live on. He does it all for our happiness and well-being. Selena herself took freelance orders, working online on an old laptop she bought off the shelf. Listen, when I left, you were wearing that sweater. The guy said to Selena, I came back. You're wearing it again. You couldn't buy yourself some new clothes over the summer. Selena tried to justify herself. She didn't like Evan saying such things in front of her friend. You work, take more orders. The guy insisted on his rightness. You know that Selena didn't know what to say. The guy's words hurt her in her heart. Was it her fault that her family was in such distress? Was it her fault? Come on, change something in yourself, or I'm beginning to think that soon you'll go back to your mother in your hovel. Don't embarrass me in front of my friends. They make fun of me almost every day. I'm ashamed to even bring you into my company, and all the boys come there in pairs. Selena looked at Ivan with bitter resentment. The guy she'd known since childhood had changed a lot over the summer. The change in him was not for the better. She realized more and more clearly that she didn't want to be around a man who said such hurtful words to her, who didn't want to understand the plight of her family and what she was trying to earn as best she could. Seeing how offended Selena, Catherine decided to interrupt this unpleasant conversation. Let's go and look at the schedule of lectures, she suggested to her friend. Probably already posted on the first floor in the hall. Let's go and look at the lecture schedule, she suggested to her friend. It's probably already posted on the first floor in the hall. Catherine took Selena by the hand, dragged her towards the stairs. On the way, she said, Well, your Evan's got a nerve. Such words to say such words. How can he only turn his tongue? He's from a simple family, and now he's playing the big boys. Selena didn't want to have this conversation. She didn't like it at all. She walked like a robot, not thinking about anything. Having rewritten the schedule into notebooks, the girls left the building of the institute. The weather outside was beautiful. It was called Golden Autumn. In the park, the yellow-red leaves of maples rustled under their feet. The air had that transparency that only happens in September. Do you need a ride? Catherine asked her friend. She knew that Selena would take more than an hour to get home. From the expression on the girl's face, Catherine understood. Today in Vanya's apartment, she will not go. No, I'll take the bus, then walk. Selena refused. The weather is great. No rain. I want to walk, think. Well then, see you tomorrow. Catherine kissed Selena on the cheek and went to the parking lot, where her new car was parked. Her friend had recently passed her driver's license, and her parents had bought her a car as a present. Catherine had offered Selena a ride, a trip to the countryside, to the river, but she had always refused. She was always busy. Selena walked down the street, unnoticeably approached a small bazaar where people were selling things, furniture, various household items. They were doing it for different reasons. Some people didn't need these things anymore, and others brought them to the flea market to get some money to live on. That's how almost all the things from their house ended up here. Mom sold something every day to feed her son and daughter. Dad died when the children were young. Selena had just started school in Harvey. You didn't know, and now you know, one of the strangers said angrily. So you have to pay it back, or do you want your children to disappear one day? He looked meaningfully at Harvey, who was playing cards on the floor, and at Selena, who had come out of the kitchen at the noise. "Leave now," Mom said. "I barely had enough money to bury my husband and I had to borrow. I have no money to pay my debts, especially since I didn't take anything from you personally." "It doesn't matter." The man approached Veronica, took her by the throat, breathing nastily in her face. "You'll pay it back like a sweetheart, otherwise we'll burn down your apartment." The frightened woman closed the door behind the strangers, sat down on the sofa, wrapping her arms around her head. She didn't know what to do. Lately, her husband had been missing all the time. Later, she learned that he plays cards in the casino. For these purposes, takes loans and borrows in dubious offices. "What are you doing?" Veronica said to her husband. "You're going to get us into the world." But Selena's father continued to play, again and again borrowed money, and then he died. The accident happened on a country highway. After examining the scene, the investigator told Veronica, "According to preliminary data, your husband failed to control himself on the slippery road from the rain, flew into the oncoming traffic lane. His car overturned several times and plummeted off the bridge into the river. The car was pulled out, but the man's body was not found. Most likely, he was swept away by the current. They searched for 2 months, but all was in vain. There was a sewage treatment plant downriver. If Veronica's husband's body had gotten there, it was impossible to find him. First, he was reported missing, and then they determined a different status, issuing documents that Selena's father had died. The first thing the girl's mother did when their apartment was left by the collectors, called the parking lot and asked if she could take her husband's car, which was there until the end of the investigation. She was allowed to do so. The mother sold the car for a small amount of money. When strange men came to their apartment again, she handed them a wad of bills. One of the strangers counted it and spoke through his teeth. "It's good that you tried to find money, but here is only the smallest part. Collect more, we'll be back soon. And don't you dare leave the city, we will still find you." The frightened woman put an ad in the newspaper to sell their country house. The cottage was in a great location and was expensive. Married, they built it together. The 2-story structure on a plot of 15 acres was the family's vacation spot. Here they went for the summer, so that the children could eat fresh vegetables and berries from the beds, which were carefully tended by Veronica. After selling the dacha, she again gave the money to the collectors, and a month later the woman sold a 4-room apartment in the center, bought a small apartment in an old house on the outskirts. Only this money was not enough, so from the house were sold almost all things, including services, chandeliers, furniture, even was sold some clothes. But collectors again and again demanded money. Veronica's husband owed a fabulous amount. Sometimes the woman cried, "You lie there in the grave and do not puff, and we went to the world, completely without anything left. Soon we will have nothing to feed our children," she bitterly and resentfully addressed her husband who had passed away. Having found out that her husband was playing cards and borrowing money, she tried to stop him many times. "Stop going to the casino, it will not end well," but her husband did not listen to her. In the end, Veronica gave up on him. Her children were more important to her. Harvey was just born, needed care and nutrition, and Selena went to school. Every evening with her had to study, do homework. Selena's sad thoughts were interrupted by a squeaky female voice. "Girl, buy a jewelry box." The girl looked at the elderly woman who was holding out a handmade wooden item to her. "Why do I need it?" Selena asked. "You give it to the dearest person, and he will thank you for it." Selena didn't know what the old woman was talking about, but she remembered that today was her mother's anniversary. They were not going to celebrate. The family had no extra money for birthday celebrations. But the girl's mom loved antique things, so Selena looked closely at the box. The elderly woman held the girl's hand. Her touch was unpleasant, chilled her heart, and goosebumps ran along her skin. Celine wanted to get rid of the grandmother as soon as possible. She sensed something scary in the old woman's eyes, something disturbing, inexplicable. She tried to pull her hand out, but the woman held it tightly. "This box will reveal a secret to you." What's she talking about? She's crazy, Selena thought. But the girl remembered how her mother had once stood on this spot and asked passersby to buy things from her. Maybe the grandmother has nothing to eat, so she carries things to the bazaar from home to get some money for food. Only this thought made Selena agree to buy the box. "All right," she said to the old woman, "but I don't have much money, and you must be asking a lot." "I'll take as much as you give me," she replied. The girl took out a purse from her purse, took out a few bills, and gave them to the grandmother. The woman gave her the box in return. "I didn't buy a present for my mom. I'll at least give her this box," Selena thought. On the way, she bought a bouquet of white peonies. Her mother loved these flowers that filled everything around her with their sweet fragrance. Listening to her daughter's story about the strange old woman, Veronica didn't understand what was going on. "Are you sure you've never seen this woman before?" she asked her daughter. "I'm sure I would have remembered her. She has a very expressive appearance," Selena convinced her mother. "She was a Baba Yaga, very unpleasant. I had a frost on my skin from her touch." "Mystical," her mother said thoughtfully. She took the pictures from the box again and looked at them. "I can't believe he's alive," Selena said. "Maybe it's a prank. Someone decided to get on our nerves by bringing us back to the past." "It's not about the past. Look." Her mom handed her one of the pictures. "This house wasn't there when her father died. It was a vacant lot. You should remember it. We used to pass through it sometimes when we wanted to take a shortcut from school to home." Selena looked closer. Indeed, this house had not been here before, but her father was photographed in front of it. The man was well-dressed, smiling at the photographer in the camera lens. "How so?" The girl did not understand. "He is alive and does not let his family know about it." "Who did they bury in a grave in the cemetery then?" Veronica and Selena sat pensively on the couch. Each was thinking about something different. The past often returns to people's lives, makes them remember old, already lost ties, makes adjustments to the present, but to resurrect the dead? That doesn't happen. However, they never saw their father dead. A coffin with his favorite things was lowered into the grave. They just had to pay tribute to the man, so that's what they did. This method of burial was insisted on by the father's mother, Selena's grandmother. "Her son died. He is no longer alive, and I won't even have a place to go to the grave," she lamented, persuading Veronica to bury at least a coffin with his things. Suddenly, Harvey entered the room. "Why are you sitting there like water in your mouth?" he asked jokingly. His mother handed the boy a box of photographs. "What's this?" Harvey looked at the pictures. "That's my father." "And where did you get such pictures? I've never seen them before." "We haven't seen them either, son," said Veronica. "Selena had bought this box today at the flea market to give to me, and in it were fresh pictures of your father." "He's dead?" the boy wondered. "Apparently not," Selena said. "Very much alive and looking good." "You guys look like crazy people right now." Selena's brother twisted his finger at his temple. He left the room, thinking that women were strange creatures and it was impossible to understand the logic of their thinking. Trying to distract herself from the strange thoughts, Veronica asked her daughter, "How are things at the institute?" "Everything is fine, Mommy," the girl replied. Outside, the window began to darken, but she was not going to leave. It seemed strange to Veronica. Her daughter had been living with her childhood friend Ivan for a year. They sort of had a love affair, although Selena's mom had never liked the guy. She was always haunted by the feeling that at the first chance he would betray her daughter, hurt her. After what her husband had done, Veronica no longer believed in the decency of men, considered them all scoundrels. Nor did she believe Evan when he told her that he wanted to be together with Selena, to build a family together. "I don't want to pressure you," Veronica told her daughter, "but Evan is slippery, unreliable. So he seems to love me." Selena tried to argue uncertainly with her mother. "Time will tell whether he loves you or not," the woman said wisely. She drew on her own experience. She had once thought her husband loved her too. But after what he had done to them, after his family had fallen into debt, she had not tried to look for good qualities in men. That's why she never married again. And when did she have time to look for suitors? All her worries were only about how to feed her children and what to dress them in. After her husband died, Veronica had to take 3 jobs. Collectors constantly came to their miserable apartment, bought to replace a large 4-room apartment, demanding money. Fearing for her life and the lives of her children, Veronica saved on everything to put money aside to pay off her husband's debts. But no matter how much she paid, the interest accrued again and again. The amount of the debt almost never decreased. "I'll stay with you tonight," Selena said. "I have a lot of things to think about in peace." "Of course, my daughter." Her mother hugged her. "This is your home too. Is something wrong?" In Veronica's eyes there was concern for her daughter. She was proud of her. The girl studied and worked part-time, not a penny from her mother. But now she was worried about something. With Vanya quarreled, shared with her mother Selena, he has recently become some kind of alien or something. "I do not want to moralize," said her mother, "but I assume that long together you will not be. You're a kind girl though, and when your Evan comes to apologize, you'll melt. You'll go back to him." "I'm not so sure about that," Selena said, putting the pictures of her father back in the box. "Why waste time with a man who doesn't appreciate you?" Veronica thought she had raised not only a beautiful and kind daughter, but also a great smart girl. Selena, indeed, was judicious, always thinking over every step. The girl put the box on the trumeau, thought that it was necessary to sort it all out properly. She went to the pantry, took out a cot from there, made herself a sleeping place in the small kitchen. "It's so nice to be in my own home with my loved ones," she thought as she drifted off to sleep. Selena's room had long been occupied by Harvey, and her mother slept on the couch in the hall, so there was no other place to spread out but the kitchen. At night, Selena dreamed of a strange old woman from the flea market. She grabbed her by the arm, laughed loudly, and said, "You'll learn the secret of your father. It will be easier on the soul and life will get better." The girl was awakened by the ringing of the cell phone. It was Evan. Without even saying hello, he shouted into the receiver, "Where are you? Why didn't you come home? I woke up in the night and you weren't there." "I was at my mom's, and this is your house, not mine," Selena replied in a sleepy voice. She thought that Evan found her absence in the night, but didn't even try to find out where his girlfriend was. What if something happened to her? What if she was in trouble? He slept peacefully through the morning, and now he's calling trying to make her look guilty. Selena sat up on the cot. "Come on, don't be stupid. Come back," the guy said insistently. "I realize I said some unpleasant things to you, but am I wrong? You've really turned into a gray moth. Shall I come get you?" "No, you don't have to come," Selena said, "and don't call again." "Fuck you." She heard the voice of an angry Vanya. The girl realized that this is not a time out to make an important decision, to take a break in the relationship. This is a breakup. She doesn't want to be around Evan anymore, doesn't want to listen to his insults, doesn't want to be a gray moth. She was more preoccupied with other thoughts right now. Selena wanted to understand if her father was really alive. However, she almost didn't doubt it anymore. She threw on a robe, opened her laptop, and tiptoed into the hall where her mother was sleeping on the couch. Selena picked up the box of photos. She wanted to scan them and find proof on the internet that her father was alive. The scans produced 0 results, and Selena ran the scanner over and over again. Suddenly, one of the pictures was identified on a social networking site. It was the page of a woman she didn't know. Not a very young person, about 40 years old, was posting pictures with Selena's father. The girl scrutinized the strange woman's face. She had definitely never met her before, or she would definitely remember her. Who was she? Why was posting pictures of her dad? Where did she even take a picture of him? Veronica entered the kitchen. "Already awake, daughter? Good morning." The woman put the kettle on the stove, lit the gas, collect the cot, and I'll make breakfast. "Harvey has second period today. When are you going to the institute?" "I have to be home by second period, Mom," Selena answered, folding the bedding neatly and putting the cot in the closet. There was no hurry. She could eat breakfast in peace, especially since she had already missed her mother's cheesecakes with sour cream. Veronica set the table and poured tea into cups. Harvey, who had fallen asleep, rubbed his eyes and sat down on a stool, reaching for a plate of cheesecakes. "Go wash up first," his mother said. Later, waved the boy away. Veronica looked at him sternly, and the son had no choice but to wander into the bathroom. "How did you sleep, Selena?" Mom asked the girl. "Not very well," she answered. "She dreamt about that woman from the market all night. What a creepy old woman she is. In my dreams, she kept telling me about some secret." Selena told her mother that she found a page of a strange woman in social networks, that she put there photos of her father. The girl turned the laptop so that her mom could look at the screen. The woman gazed at the different pictures, flipping through the page. "I've never seen this woman," she said thoughtfully. "I certainly don't know her, and I've never seen my father before." "Who is that?" "And I don't know, Mom," answered her daughter, "but I'm determined to find out. Otherwise, I won't be able to sleep well." "And maybe you shouldn't," tried to persuade Selena, "Mother. For us, he's dead. And if it's not so, then why did he not show up?" "Maybe he was threatened because of his debts. He was afraid of being killed." Veronica felt her resentment and anger at her husband boiling up in her. "He was alive, but he made me a widow and put me in debt. You remember how hard it was for us then, how we were deprived of a good home, a country house, how for days we ate rye bread and chowder, which had not a gram of fat, because there was nothing to buy meat with." Veronica broke apart. Sad memories came over her. Every time the bell rang in the apartment, she flinched, afraid that they would be killed or that her children would be taken away from her. Often the debt collectors came when Mom was at work. They would ring the doorbell, and Selena would grab little Harvey, hold him with one hand, and with the other she would clamp her mouth shut so he wouldn't scream, so that the strange men would think no one was home. For several years, while the mother paid off her late husband's debts, the children did not know what candy was. She had nothing to buy clothes for her son and daughter. At night, the woman sewed on an old sewing machine, restitching some clothes to dress the children. Selena did not know what beautiful dresses and heeled shoes were, and Harvey was constantly teased by the boys in the yard. The children hardly ever saw their mother. Coming from one job, she again ran away to another, making sure only that her son and daughter were at home, that they were not stolen, not kidnapped. The woman was always tired, exhausted. She did not mourn her husband, did not think about their past life together. All Veronica's thoughts were occupied with how to pay off debts. What else to do so that the collectors got rid of her, stopped threatening? To help her mother, Selena began to clean the entrances in the neighboring apartment building. 4 entrances in a 9-story building was not easy for her. In addition, cleaning took a lot of time, and the girl still had to do her homework, pick up her younger brother from kindergarten, something to feed. The penny she received for cleaning the entrances, the girl gave to her mother, and the latter bought simple products. Earlier, when they had a country house, they often brought potatoes and other vegetables from there. Now there was not even this help. The formerly prosperous family quickly turned into a beggar family. Selena didn't even go to the graduation party because she had nothing to wear. "Don't make excuses for him," Veronica said. "I warned him that playing cards wouldn't do any good, but he didn't listen to me. He always did everything his own way and didn't want to consider us. He lived for his own pleasure. I had the misfortune to marry that coward and scoundrel." "Calm down," Mom tried to interrupt Veronica Selena, but the flow of her mother's bitterness, resentment, and anger seemed to be inexhaustible. The words were pouring out of her heart, filled with worry for the children who had to endure such deprivation, fear, half-starved life. However, no matter how bad it was, Veronica always tried only for her son and daughter. She denied herself everything. Sometimes she went to bed hungry, dividing her dinner between Selena and Kolka. Several years of fear for her children, hunger, poverty. Veronica was able to get out of all this only by paying off the debt to the debt collectors. But even now, when their family is not threatened, they live very poorly. Simple furniture, an unrenovated apartment, inexpensive clothes, only the bare necessities. It was good that Selena managed to enter the institute on a budget. If she had failed the entrance exams, her mother would have had nothing to pay for her daughter's studies on a commercial basis. The girl hugged her mother. She was afraid her blood pressure would skyrocket and tried to calm her down. "I'll try to figure it all out," Selena said confidently. "I'll try to find out who the old woman was who gave you that damn box with your father's pictures in it." Selena jabbed at her laptop again. "We need to geolocate, find out where the pictures were taken," she thought. The girl was looking at a photo in the gallery on the page of a strange woman. Here she was standing next to a large, luxurious 2-story cottage. It was obvious that the woman was not poor. She was wearing fashionable clothes, beautifully styled hair with the effect of lamination. In the background was visible plot of land with a pool and a gazebo, buried in rose bushes. It turns out that her father accumulated debts, realized that her mother would not help him, faked his death, and went to live with a rich woman. Selena's head began to form a logical chain that seemed unbelievable in its meanness. It turns out so, agreed her mother, finishing the dishes after breakfast. Suddenly, Selena's laptop gave out a geolocation. It turned out that the house the beautiful woman had been photographed next to was 3 hours away from their town by train. I'll have to go there. It's the only way I can find out something about my father. Find him and look him in the eye, Selena thought. She wrote down the address on a piece of paper, closed her laptop, and started to get ready for the institute. Leaving the house, she walked the same way, hoping to meet the old woman at the flea market. But the Baka, who looked like Baba Yaga, was nowhere to be found. Between lectures, Selena told about everything that happened yesterday to her friend Ekaterina. She listened without interrupting and then said, "You do not worry. I myself was shocked yesterday from the way Evan treats you. I thought you were in love, but in reality, he's just using you and humiliating you. Sure, he likes it when he comes home to a hot dinner and at night, he gets his share of female affection. But a real man should not only receive, but also give. Your Ivan is not one of those real men." As for the story with the box, Catherine did not know how to support her friend. Told by her, really was incredible, seemed unreal. "I thought such stories only in the sick brain directors of various melodramas are born," smiled sadly Catherine. "But apparently, and in life happens something that cannot be explained. We must try to find out all the facts." Began to share his plan. Selena once again thanked her friend for her participation. The girls kissed on the cheek and parted. Right from the institute, Selena went to the train station. She bought a ticket and went to the platform. The girl was worried. She couldn't stop thinking about what she would say to the strange woman from the rich house. Selena tried to mentally talk through everything that had accumulated, built a dialogue with the stranger, assumed her answers to the questions that worried Selena. Immersed in her thoughts, she'd almost passed the desired station. Stepping onto the platform, the girl looked around. Apparently, it was a cottage village, because the settlement did not look like a village or a hamlet. She approached a man with a suitcase and asked for directions to the street, the name of which was written on a piece of paper. "Sorry, girl." The man shook his head. "I'm not from around here. I was visiting, so I can't help you." Selena walked away from the station building towards the houses on the first street she could find. Suddenly, she remembered that in her smartphone, she could download a map of the village and find the desired address. The girl sat down on a bench next to a store and started looking for the coordinates in her phone. It turned out that the house she needed was at the other end of the village. Selena walked down the street again. Despite the map she was looking at on her smartphone, she was still lost. There was no way she could figure out where she was. When she saw a woman with a stroller walking towards her, she decided to ask for help. "Hello, can you tell me how to get to this address?" She addressed the young mother. The woman stopped, still rocking the stroller, looked at the leaf. "It is very close," she said, showing the direction with her hand. "Go straight, then turn right and to the end of the street." "Thank you," Selena thanked her. After a while, she found herself at the right house. The girl recognized it. It was exactly the same as in the picture. The entrance to the plot was blocked by a high, massive gate with forged elements, and next to it was a wicket. The girl rang the bell. A beautiful woman came out of the house. From the expression on her face, Selena realized that the stranger was not very happy to see the guest. "Who are you and what do you want?" The woman began to say, "If you are going to sell me a vacuum cleaner or a toaster, go straight away. Go from day to day, no peace. Normal people do not buy anything from such passable, is not it clear? There are stores and marketplaces for shopping, and you're all wandering around the house, disturbing them with your visits." "I'm sorry," Selena interrupted her. "I'm not selling anything. Don't swear, please, and I'm sorry again for bothering you." She pulled out the photos she had taken from the wooden box, handing the woman one of the pictures. "I need to know what your connection is to this man." The girl spoke up. The woman took the photograph in her hands, looked at the image carefully. It was clear from her face that she knew him. "And why should I tell you anything?" she asked. "Who are you anyway?" "The thing is, the picture is of my father. He died tragically 10 years ago." "Dead, you say?" The woman was surprised, but I think he's alive and doing very well. So you know him? Selena asked. The woman opened the gate wide and gestured for the girl to come in. Let's go into the house. Selena followed the stranger, her heart racing. A few more minutes and she would know everything about her father. Maybe then she could understand why he had acted so shamelessly to his family, why he had made her mother suffer, abandoned her son and daughter. The woman led Selena into the house. They entered the large kitchen. What a setting, Selena thought to herself. Looking at the luxurious kitchen set, the bar counter with high chairs, outlandish appliances. You sit down wherever you feel comfortable, the woman said, and I'll make some coffee. Do you want coffee or tea? Coffee is fine, Selena replied modestly. My name is Emma, said the woman, pouring the beans into the tank of the coffee machine. I'm Selena. In the picture is my father. His name was Victor. I've heard that before. You don't have to repeat it. The girl was silent, waiting for Emma to say something about her father. But the woman silently took out cups from the cupboard, preparing a flavorful drink. When did you say your father died? She finally spoke. 10 years ago, he was in a car accident. We buried him in a closed coffin, putting there only things. They never found the body. Where did you get those pictures? Emma asked. The pictures came to me by accident. I bought the box at the market from an old woman, not because I liked it, but because she begged me to. And I thought maybe she didn't have enough money for food, Selena told me. She was silent for a while, then said in a quiet voice, when my father died, my mother also stood at the flea market and sold things, because my brother and I had nothing to feed. I met Victor also about 10 years ago. Selena began her story. He seemed very lonely to me. I had just divorced my husband. I needed companionship. I wanted to distract myself from the memories of separation. And then Victor came along. He seemed calm and balanced, not like my ex-husband, who regularly beat me. Because of his beatings, I can't have children now. That's terrible, Selena said. The girl herself thought that it was true. Her father was alive, and he knew Emma. That was the key to the mystery Selena wanted to solve. We started dating Victor, Emma continued, and with him I forgot about the divorce and my abuser husband. Victor never laid a hand on me. We lived in my apartment downtown. I have a large apartment, combined from two on the same stairwell. But Victor kept insisting that we buy a country house, somewhere away from the city. It seemed noisy and dirty to him, you see. Of course, he wanted to go far away so he wouldn't accidentally run into our mom or his kids somewhere, Selena thought. And you bought this house? She asked Emma. Yes, my father is not the last man in our region. He holds a very good position. I borrowed money from him. Notice, she said, a very large sum of money. That's when we bought this house, started living here. My apartment in the city was still empty. I did not want to sell it, and it is very expensive. It is not easy to find a buyer in a provincial city. You drink coffee. Do not be shy. Take sandwiches, probably hungry from the road. The woman moved the cup of coffee and a plate of sandwiches closer to Selena. The girl felt hungry. She hadn't eaten anything since this morning. Thank you so much, she thanked Emma. I really am starving. Chewing on a bun with cheese and sausage, she asked. Did my father ever tell you that he had a family? He never said a word. I also thought it was strange that he didn't care that I couldn't have children. My ex beat me up so badly I had to have surgery, which left me infertile. But nothing. He still longed to sit in jail. My father tried, attracted all the connections, that this bastard for a long time closed. Selena realized that Emma is immersed in his own memories and leaves the topic of conversation, which was so important for the girl. Where is Victor? I mean my father now, she asked Emma. He went to the neighboring village on business, the woman answered. Do you want more coffee? Selena nodded, moving the empty cup towards Emma. I'm sorry, I can't offer you anything but sandwiches. Cooking isn't really my thing. Victor usually does that. Selena thought the woman was talking about some other man, not her father. Dad never stood at the stove. In fact, he didn't even make his own sandwiches or fry his own eggs. That was all Mommy's job. She suddenly decided that it was not worth beating around the bush. Emma had treated her well, so it was time to tell it like it was. You see, Selena began her story. We were a close-knit, well-to-do family. My little brother and I didn't need anything. But but after Kalia was born, my father was replaced. I began to hear often that he raises his voice at my mother, and he was always disappearing somewhere, could come in the morning, was nervous, constantly angry. I only later learned that my father started playing cards and this hobby turned into an addiction. It's also called gambling addiction. Yes, it can happen, Emma nodded. She sat down across from Selena, palm resting on her chin, ready to listen. One day, the police called my mom and told her that my dad had been killed in a car accident. More precisely, they said that his car had overturned and fallen off the bridge into the river. The investigation team and divers worked there, but they didn't find my father's body. They thought he was carried away by the current. That's how we buried him. He was actually alive, I take it? Emma asked. Yes, I'm sure of it now, Celine said. She liked Emma more and more. She wanted to tell everything to this woman she had seen for the first time. After the funeral, strange men showed up at our apartment. They were debt collectors who had come to collect my father's debts. Mom explained to them that he was not alive, but the men said that now she owed them for her husband, and if she didn't give them the money, our bodies would be found somewhere in the forest or in the river. Mom was very afraid for herself and even more afraid for Harvey and me. She sold our house outside the city, sold the apartment, collected money from acquaintances, sold things, furniture, dishes. But the amount collected wasn't enough. Collectors threatened every time. My mom started working 3 jobs, but we were still starving. Harvey was sometimes not taken to kindergarten because he had no clothes or shoes. My mom was very tired. The 3 jobs and constant hunger severely damaged her health. Did she die? Emma asked. No? Thank God. But now she's often sick. Her legs don't walk well. Her blood pressure is skyrocketing. But don't think, she doesn't complain. She did everything to keep us from starving to death and to get the debt collectors off our backs. God, that's terrible, Emma said. I'm so sorry for you and your mom. So much to go through. We're not very well off now, but we have enough to live on. My mom still works. I work part-time, and Harvey is in school. The only thing I don't understand is why my dad didn't let me know he was alive. If he was afraid for his life, that he'd be found and killed for his debts. Why did he worry about us? He faked his own death and ran away, jeopardizing the lives of the people closest to him and children who were certainly not to blame for what happened to him. Emma pressed her lips together. It was obvious that she didn't know the answers to the questions that bothered the pretty girl sitting across from her. The woman looked out the window. There's Victor, she said. A large black car pulled up to the house. The gate swung open automatically, and the car drove into the yard. A man got out. Selena recognized him as her father. He hadn't changed much in 10 years. He looked very good. Victor, we have company, Emma shouted. She probably wanted to warn Selena's father that she wasn't alone. Yes, there was a man's voice. Who's visiting? Selena's dad walked into the kitchen. She stared at him, unable to say a word. Is that you? Dad said. He went to the sideboard, took out a glass and a bottle of whiskey and poured some. Why am I not surprised? Maybe because you were always waiting and afraid that your secret would be revealed. Suddenly, Selena answered sharply. Why did you come here? Why did you find me? Asked her father. To look into your eyes, to ask why you did this to Mom and to us. Selena felt anger boiling inside her. In her father's eyes, she saw no sense of remorse, no regret, no pity. There was only fear in them. The man had lived all these years afraid of being found, of being forced to pay back the money he had borrowed. Here, look. Taking a sip from the glass, Victor turned to his daughter. At that moment, she was amazed at how insolent his look was. She looked. Now get out and don't dare to tell anyone about me. The father loomed menacingly over the girl. She looked up at him, tears welling up in her eyes. Selena had hoped to the last minute that her father's forced act had been weighing on him for the past 10 years, that he was worried about his family, that his heart was bleeding. But this man seemed to have the coldest heart of all. When you died, Selena was silent for a moment, then continued in a quiet voice, afraid to cry. The debt collectors came to our house. They were beating the money out of Mom. Mom sold everything to pay back what you borrowed from different credit companies. We had nothing to eat, nothing to wear. Mom worked 3 jobs. We were starving. Do you realize that? Your children and the woman you love were starving, exhausted by hard labor. Mom did everything she could to keep us alive and pay off your debts. It cost her her health and us several years of humiliation. I was called a beggar at school because I wore overstitched clothes that were always darned. Did you feel sorry for us? Did you regret anything?" The girl's eyes were filled with a pain that was hard to bear. Victor straightened up, again splashed whiskey into the glass. "I haven't loved your mother for a long time," he said, "but I didn't know my debts would be kicked out of her." Suddenly, he turned to face Selena. It was twisted with a grimace of anger. "I didn't know," he shouted. "Do you realize that? Now get out and don't ever let me see you again." "Get out," I said. Selena slowly stood up and walked towards the exit. In the doorway, she stopped, turned around, and said quietly, "I feel sorry for you. You have no one in this life." Emma remained silent the whole time, watching the drama playing out in her house. When Selena went to the front door, she caught up with her and walked her to the gate. In parting, the woman said, "Selena, please leave me your phone number." The girl took out of her purse a notebook in which she usually wrote down the schedule of lectures at the institute, wrote the phone number, and gave it to Emma. She quickly walked away, no longer holding back her tears. How much time passed until the girl reached the train station, she did not know. Selena got lost again in the unfamiliar village, wandered through the streets, and when she got to the platform, the railroad platform was empty and night had fallen on the village. The station building was closed. Seeing the schedule on the door, Selena realized that there would be no more trains today and she would have to wait until morning. The autumn wind blew strongly. The weather, which had been so pleasant during the day, turned bad. The girl shivered, wrapped herself in a thin windbreaker. She wanted to sleep. Selena sat down on a bench, began to peck her nose, her eyes closed by themselves. Her body's defenses were working, forcing her to fall into a deep sleep to survive the extreme stress she had experienced today. Selena lay down on the bench, put her purse next to her, and fell into a deep sleep. Emma's face appeared in her visions, then her father's angry grimace. She woke up to someone snatching her purse from her hands. When she opened her eyes, she saw a boy running down the platform, holding her bag in his hands. That was the last straw, Selena sobbed, unable to hold back her tears. She sobbed like a child who had been badly hurt. The girl didn't understand why all this was happening to her, why she had come here at all, why she was looking for her father. What did she expect? That he would rush to hug and kiss her? That he'd apologize on his knees? No, that didn't happen. It wasn't his style. His father was a selfish man who cared only about his own well-being and didn't care about his family at all. Dawn was barely breaking in the sky. It was still a long way off until morning. Selena approached the station building, wiping her tears with the sleeve of her windbreaker. The first train was at 10 o'clock. She glanced at her watch. It showed 4 in the morning. Sitting at the station was pointless. The money for the ticket was left in the purse the boy had stolen. After thinking for a while, Selena took her cell phone out of her pocket and dialed Catherine's number. She picked up the phone surprisingly quickly. "Catherine, sorry to wake you up." Selena began to speak. "What happened? Why are you calling so early? Where are you?" "Worried friend. I'm in the village that the navigator pointed me to at the train station." Selena's voice suddenly snapped and she sobbed again. Selena, calmed down. "Tell everything in order." Catherine was very worried about her friend. She was waiting for her to call in the evening and tell the news about her father, but there was no call. "My bag was stolen, and there is money for the return ticket." Calming down, complained the girl. "So everything will be fine," assured her friend. "Send me the coordinates. I'm on my way to you." "But you don't go anywhere, you hear? Don't go anywhere." "Okay," Selena replied. "I'll be waiting here on the bench on the platform. I'm on my way. Hang in there. I'll try to be quick," said her friend and disconnected. The girl leaned back on the bench. Everything that had happened to her yesterday seemed like a nightmare, a terrible dream. She waited for Katerina, occasionally glancing at her watch. 3 hours later, a red car appeared in the parking lot near the railway station. Selena's friend ran out of it. She hugged her, stroking her hair, saying, "It's all right now, don't worry." Whether from the stress she had experienced or from the cold, Selena was shivering. Noticing this, Catherine quickly led her friend to the car. "Sit down," she said, and herself pulled out of the Trump plush plate, covered Selena well that I took a thermos with hot tea. Though while rumbling in the kitchen, Mother woke up, and she began to grumble in her sleep that I at night wandered here and there. Catherine said something without a word, and her words echoed somewhere far away. "Oh, let's go home." Finally sat down behind the wheel. "Catherine, we will not hurry. Let's go quietly." Here I was flying like crazy. It's good at least the roads are empty, and that I still do not know how to overtake normally. The car started and drove down the street toward the exit from the village. The girls were silent. Catherine realized that now is not the time for questioning. She kept thinking what horror Selena must have experienced, seeing her father, whom she thought was dead. Suddenly, Selena began to sob loudly and then cried again. Without saying anything, Catherine stopped the car, pulling to the curb. She remained silent, looking out the windshield, realizing that her friend just needed to cry. Catherine had given her that opportunity. When Selena had calmed down, they set off again. Already on the approach to the city, Selena spoke up herself. "Thank you, Catherine, for getting me out of there. In fact, I was really scared when I was alone at the train station, and even without money to get home." "Don't thank me, we are friends," Catherine replied, "and I offered you to take my car. Would not have had to endure so much." If only her friend knew how much Selena had to go through yesterday. She suddenly really wanted to share with Catherine, and the latter, as if sensing Selena's mood, asked, "Well, did you at least have a successful trip? Did you find answers to your questions?" "Found," said Selena sadly. "Only after these answers, questions became even more." "What do you mean?" "Don't talk in riddles. Rebuses are not my thing." Catherine looked at her friend carefully, then moved her gaze to the road. "Have you seen your father? He is not really dead. Alive and well and even feels very good," said Selena. "He lives in a luxurious house with a beautiful woman, drives an expensive car, does not give a shit that his family almost starved to death because of his debts." "No way," stretched out her friend. Selena briefly told her everything that had happened yesterday about Emma and her father, and how he'd driven her away. "I didn't think people could be so cruel to their loved ones," Catherine muttered. "You're his children." "Apparently they can," Selena replied in a philosophical tone. They had already arrived at her house. It was time to say goodbye. "Katusha, tell the Institute that I feel bad, that I'm sick," asked Selena and Katerina. "Sure, don't even worry." The friends said goodbye, and Selena wandered to her entrance. She wanted to take a hot shower and go to bed. Her mom was already awake. Seeing her daughter exhausted by a sleepless night and nervousness, she straightened her couch in the hall. When the girl came out of the bathroom, the woman did not question her about anything, silently went out and closed the door to the room so that Harvey, who had woken up, would not wake up her sister. Veronica also found out something. She did not sit idly by and tried to find the old woman who had sold her daughter a box of photographs. She suspected that her dead husband's brother, Oliver, might have known about the old woman. After walking Harvey to school, the woman began to make soup, trying not to make any noise so as not to wake her daughter. She realized from the look on Selena's face that a lot had happened to her yesterday, so they would have something to talk about when her daughter woke up. Selena woke up in the afternoon. From the kitchen came Kolia's voice. "I don't want soup," refused to eat lunch boy. He studied in the first shift and had already returned from school, had to make cutlets with pasta. "Come on, eat," trying to speak quietly, ordered his mother. "In the evening, I'll make you cutlets with pasta, and now eat soup. You've been starving all day," shaking your empty guts. "You didn't eat in the school cafeteria again, did you?" "It's not good there," Selena's brother continued to whine unhappily. The girl took a robe from the back of the chair, threw it on, went to the kitchen. Very hungry to eat, and the aroma of chicken broth even more caused hungry salivation. "Good morning, everyone." Forgetting that she had already slept through lunch, Selena said. "What a morning," Harvey said indignantly. "Where have you been all night? Were you running to your beloved Avon again?" "No, I wasn't." Harvey jokingly slapped her brother on the forehead. "Chew on that and go to your room. Mom and I need to have a serious talk. Our conversation is not for children's ears." "Oh, found a child." Harvey considered himself all grown up and didn't like it when his sister pointed out that he was much younger than her. When he left, Veronica closed the door to the kitchen and sat down at the table with her daughter. Selena could see that her mother was waiting for news from her, but didn't know how to begin to tell her about the nightmare she had experienced yesterday in the unfamiliar village. Seeing her daughter's confusion, Veronica began her story. "When you left for the institute," said the woman, "I went to the flea market. According to the signs you described, I started looking for the old woman. While I was looking for her, I thought, just show your face to me, I'll shake your soul out of you. But I'll know everything about my dead husband." So I was walking, and I saw Victor's brother standing there talking to some gnarled old woman. He shoved money into her hands, and he went to the exit of the bazaar with quick steps. I rushed after him. Why? Selena didn't understand. Uncle Oliver had never been on good terms with her father. They were always quarreling, and her paternal grandmother had always loved Victor more than Oliver. The girl looked at her mother incomprehensively. I wouldn't even talk to him. Knowing our situation, he wouldn't even help us with a penny or a piece of bread. And he couldn't have known that we were being drained of our father's debts. He didn't know, Veronica continued, so I caught up with him, shouting, "Oliver, wait, stop." He turned around, recognized me, and wasn't surprised to see me. I asked him who the woman he was talking to was, and also what he'd given her the money for. Then Oliver said it was time to tell me all about my husband and invited me to the cafe. Oliver was the eldest in the family. Besides him, there was Victor, who was 3 years younger, and his sister Natalie, the youngest. The children had never been friendly with each other. In childhood, they constantly quarreled, taking away each other's toys, bicycles, and sweets. As they grew up, they started fighting over money. Oliver knew that his mother, Veronica's mother-in-law, was always helping Victor with money, giving it to him without asking him to give it back. To her eldest son, however, his mother gave nothing. He worked hard and independently built a house for his family. When Oliver learned about the death of his brother, he was very worried. Despite the fact that they were friends, never talked heart to heart, never spent time together, such an early and tragic death Oliver would not have wished an enemy. He sincerely mourned his brother in the cemetery, supported his mother, who killed with grief, all the time trying to lie on the grave, shouting, "Take me with you, son." I felt sorry for Oliver and the family of his dead brother. They saw each other rarely. He almost did not know Victor's children and did not communicate with his wife. With his brother, they were like strangers. That's why Oliver didn't go to Veronica after the funeral, just as he didn't go while his brother was alive. Twice a year, he went to his brother's grave on the date of his death and on Victor's birthday. He often met his mother and sister at the grave. One day, he happened to overhear their conversation. The women thought the man could not hear. He was going through something in the trunk of his car. Oliver, indeed, did not hear everything, but the essence of the conversation. He realized that Victor had not died at all, but had simply faked his death to hide from the debt collectors, who were shaking money out of him and threatening him with death. Victor had thought it all through. Victor's mother told her youngest daughter, "It's scary to think what would have happened to him if we hadn't helped him fake the accident. Those bandits would probably have killed him already." "Yes, Mom, it's good that he's safe now," answered the daughter. "When was the last time you saw him?" 2 months ago," answered the woman. "We met secretly at the train station. We can't let anyone know Victor is alive, or they'll be looking for him again." Oliver got a chill inside. He'd never felt much warmth for his mother and sister, but to realize they were such complete hypocrites was beyond him. He approached the women and asked one single question. "So the brother didn't die in the car accident then?" Mother and daughter were confused. Oliver's mother was the first to pull herself together. "What are you talking nonsense, son?" she ranted. "There he is, lying breathless in the grave. Our Victor is dead, gone prematurely in the prime of life, and we can only mourn him and carry flowers to this grave." "Enough, Mother," Oliver interrupted her. "I've heard everything. You just said you met him 2 months ago at the train station." "You misunderstood, Oliver." The mother tried to justify herself. "I didn't meet him." At this point, the sister entered the conversation. "Mom, maybe you should stop hiding from Oliver that Victor is alive. He's still his own brother." "Yes, so dear that they fought every day, did not give each other hands." The woman was indignant and angry, and Oliver would be the first to give his brother to the collectors. "You think badly of me, Mom," the man said, turned away, hurried to his car. He realized that all these years his relatives deceived him, did not trust the secret, and he, like a fool, went to his brother's grave, put it in order, put a stone monument and a fence on his own money. Oliver thought that even if they quarreled when he was alive, he would make sure that his brother's burial place looked decent. "Did you believe him, Mom?" Selena asked Veronica. It seemed unreal to her, what Uncle Oliver said. "And you remember how grandmother had killed herself at the funeral, how she yelled at the cemetery, 'Son, take me with you to the grave.'" "That's the thing," Veronica said. "My mother-in-law never loved me. That's why she didn't trust me with the terrible secret of staging a car accident. But I did not even suspect what acting talent she possesses, because so played out the grief of his mother that even a skeptic would believe and laid down next to the grave to weep with her at the same time." That's right. Celine supported her mother. She remembered that day well and had not yet forgotten how his grandmother was writhing on her son's grave. So, Veronica continued, Oliver kept the news that his brother was alive for a long time, but it kept him awake. He started coming home to his mother's house more often to find any clues, to try to grasp at something that would lead him to his brother. He wanted to tell him what was going on in our family, how poor we were, how we were in debt. One day, Oliver noticed that his mother was going somewhere. In the hallway was a densely packed bag, closed tightly with a zipper. Oliver followed her and saw her meeting Victor in the park. He couldn't believe his eyes for a long time. His brother looked quite healthy, even a little better. When mother and son said goodbye, Oliver followed his brother and tracked down where he lived. He couldn't resist going up to him and saying something nasty. Oliver resented the fact that Victor had the conscience to deceive everyone, while he lived in a beautiful house. A few days later, Oliver came to the village again, bringing his camera with him. He took a few pictures. In his heart, Oliver wanted to take revenge on his brother and show the pictures to his wife, but he didn't dare to do it. He's a coward like Victor, a hypocrite like their mother, Veronica said, but the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And they also say that oranges don't come from aspens. Selena agreed with her mother. Yeah, that's right. Oliver preferred, like his relatives, to shift responsibility to other people, continuing to tell. Veronica poured tea for her daughter, moved the vase with jam. They all used to do everything by the hands of others. He couldn't wait to tell me that I wasn't a widow, but he was afraid. So he hired that old woman. He watched our family, knew almost everything about our lives. He knew which way you went to the bus stop to get to the institute and which way you came back. But he wanted to show me the pictures first. Oliver would pay an old woman to hit on me on the street under the guise of a psychic. When she did, Veronica yelled at the old woman and swung her bag at her so hard that she hurried away. Selena's mother was not a cowardly and indecisive person. She hated beggars and all those who tried to fool people's heads with predictions. Oliver's attempt failed, then he decided to act through Selena. The old woman caught up with you and handed you the damn box, and you bought it from her out of the goodness of your heart, thinking she couldn't afford to buy food. Yes, that's what I thought, Selena confirmed. I remember hunger. I always feel sorry for people who are in trouble. Your kind heart is the reason why this box of pictures appeared in our house. That's the whole story, and then you can tell me the rest. Wait, Mom, interrupted her daughter, but Uncle Oliver, he's what? And that Uncle Oliver, he apologized to me for a long time. He said that he himself knew nothing, that if that accidentally overheard conversation, he would still consider his brother dead. Realizing that the conversation will now continue, and it will be long, Veronica again put the kettle on the stove to heat. He hated his brother, always wanted to hurt him. By revealing this terrible secret to us, he has his own agenda first and foremost. Oliver wants us to tell the police and the debt collectors that your father's alive. That's gonna hurt Victor, and it's not like Oliver had anything to do with it. I'm telling you, the whole family are cowards who can't solve their own problems. Do you believe that Uncle Oliver didn't know? The girl asked. 50-50, the mother replied, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's lying, if they were all working together on a plan to stage Victor's death. Oliver's just afraid to admit it. Mom, I feel like this isn't happening to us, like we're watching a movie. Unfortunately, we are, daughter. Selena shook her head. In turn, Selena also spoke about the information she had received. She told her mother how she had met Emma, her father's new wife. She didn't immediately understand me. At first, she thought I was one of those salesmen who go door to door and offer to buy all sorts of nonsense, Selena said. But then she invited me in and even fed me. She must be a good woman, Veronica said. But I didn't recognize my father. I saw nothing but coldness and anger in his gaze. Just imagine, he just chased me out of the house, threw me out the door like a kitten. Veronica's heart ached. She could imagine how her daughter felt. Her own father, who she had lost in childhood, for whom she had suffered so much, did not even ask her how she lived, how she finished school, how she entered the institute. What is going on in the fate of his daughter? And after all, she is his own blood, his first child. Veronica loved her children very much. With every cell of her body, she felt when they were bad, when they suffered, and also suffered with them. She would never have let anyone hurt Lara or Harvey, but there was a mean man who didn't care about the children at all. She didn't know what to say to Selena, and she hesitated for a moment, then said quietly but firmly, "And you kick him out of your memory, just as he chased you out of the door. Forget about him, daughter. Maybe that will make life easier." "I will, Mom," Selena promised. The next day she went to the institute. It was the last year of her studies, the most important. Selena hoped to graduate with a red diploma, so she took her studies seriously. Evan was waiting for her at the entrance. "Hi," as if nothing had happened, said the guy. "Hello," the girl answered him. "Selena, stop fooling around. Come on, come back to my place." The girl looked at him and slowly walked towards the institute. Evan followed her. Evan tried to take her hand, but Selena pulled it away. "Put it in her pocket. Don't fool around, Selena. After the institute, I'll help you to bring back the things you took. We'll live like before. I'm bored without you, do you understand?" Suddenly, the guy changed his tone, and in general, "I come home to eat nothing to eat. The room is a mess. Things clean and ironed soon will not be left at all. In what I will go to lectures and to friends." He's not even trying to apologize, Selena thought. The guy didn't think he'd offended her at all, showing his not-so-facetious side. "I'm not going back, Evan," she muttered. The girl stopped and looked into Evan's eyes. "You know, I've realized a lot in the last few days. You are not capable of love. It is more important for you to use people to make your own life comfortable. I don't meet such a person. Sooner or later you will betray me, and I don't want that." Selena walked down the path, opened the door to the institute building, and hid behind it. "Go to hell," Evan cursed angrily. After the lectures, Catherine and Selena went to the park. There was a small summer cafe where the girls liked to drink coffee and eat ice cream. Despite the fact that it was September, the cafe had not closed yet. The weather was perfect, sunny and warm. Selena really liked the way the park looked in September. It was completely immersed in the gold of the fall leaves. Rustling underfoot, they had a soothing effect on the girl. Sitting at a table in the cafe and waiting for their order, the friends talked quietly. "What are you and Mom now going to do?" asked Catherine. "Nothing," answered Selena. "We will live as we lived. This year I will have to work more part-time, but I will manage. I will get a diploma and go to work on a permanent job. Life will be more stable." "Don't you want to take revenge on your father for all the grief he caused you?" "No, this is not a solution. To resemble scoundrels, hypocrites is not on the method," smiled Selena. "And Evan, what did you decide with him?" "Did not restrain, did not stop asking questions, Catherine." "With Evan we parted," answered the friend, feeling how from these aloud-spoken words she becomes easier on the soul. "You see, Catherine, Evan does not need me. He needs a nanny and a lover in one person. And I still want to be happy myself. Maybe I'll meet a man who will love me for real, will care, not insult me. Evan couldn't even break up properly. He insulted me again and sent me to hell. He didn't even realize that I could live perfectly well without him." The friends talked for a long time, but time was running out and we had to break up. I'll give you a ride home," Catherine offered. "No, thank you, dear. I want to walk," Selena refused. She went to the bus stop. Walking through the place where the old woman sold her a box of photographs, the girl noticed a familiar figure. She leisurely approached the old woman. "Hello," Selena said with a smile. The grandmother looked at her with an attentive gaze. At first it seemed to the girl that she did not recognize her, did not remember that student, whom she almost forced to buy the thing. but the old woman remembered her perfectly well. "Did you recognize the secret?" she asked. "Grandma did," Selena replied. "Doesn't it make you feel better?" the old woman asked. "Yes," Selena agreed. Then by a kitten, the grandmother took out a fluffy lump with big eyes from under her coat. The kitten was barely a month old. "It's a puerile little kitten looking at Selena. It will bring you happiness." Selena opened her purse, took out her wallet, and handed the grandmother a bill. "I don't have any more," she said. "And I have enough." The old woman handed the girl the animal. Selena gently cuddled it to her and walked leisurely in the direction of her house. And the old woman waved her hand, quietly whispered, "He will bring you happiness." As she approached the entryway, Selena noticed that the light in the kitchen was on. "Probably Mom is cooking dinner," the girl thought. "I'm here," she shouted, opening the door with her key. "Who's home?" Harvey ran out to meet her. "What are you yelling about? Mom's having some important conversation in the kitchen. She sent me away, told me to be quiet in the room," the boy warned her sister. He noticed a kitten in her hands. "Oh, how tiny!" The guy's voice sounded a few tones higher. He was practically squeaking, admiring the creature in Selena's hands. "Where did you get it? Let me hold it. Do you think Mom will let me keep him?" "Here," said the girl, holding out the kitten to her brother, "and go to your room since Mom told you to." So she really does have serious business. "Who's in the kitchen?" "I don't know, some woman." My brother walked down the hall. When Selena entered the kitchen, she was speechless. Sitting at the same table as her mom was Emma. They were drinking tea, talking. "Selena came from the institute," exclaimed Veronica. "Come in, daughter. Sit down. Or rather Emma needs to talk to you." "Hello, Selena," smiled the woman. "Good evening." Not understanding anything, replied the girl. She pulled out a stool from under the table, hesitantly sat down. "And how did you find us?" "You wrote me your phone number," said the woman, and her face was smiling. "And I have serious connections that can easily find out any information about a person. And to get his address, find out his phone number, it's a matter of minutes." "I thought I'd never see you again," Selena said, surprised. "But I thought I'd never see you again." "But I immediately realized that you and I will meet again," Emma said, which further confused the girl. "You know, daughter," Veronica said, "Emma is just as you described her, a very sweet and cordial woman. But it was our father who made her unhappy." Not understanding anything, Selena looked at her mother and then at the guest. "Yes, that's how it is in life, dear." Emma continued the conversation. "I thought everything was settled in my life. After hard years of life with my first husband, after his beatings and abuse, I met a decent man with whom I can meet my old age." Selena's mom laughed good-naturedly. "It is unlikely. Next to people like Victor, old age is not enjoy, rotten man," said Veronica. "But it didn't seem so to me at first. I even sincerely thought that I had fallen in love with him. It seems uneconomic, and at home a lot can do. True, he did not really like my father, but he always put up with my desires, because the main thing for the parent of the only daughter that she was happy. So he put up with it, but he came to visit less often. He was not happy to see Victor." Veronica poured tea. Selena asked Emma, "Would you like some more hot tea?" "No, Veronica. Thank you." She covered the cup with her palm. Celine noticed the expensive makeup, smooth skin, and several rings adorning Emma's long fingers. "We would have lived like this with Victor if Selena hadn't shown up." The woman looked at the girl meaningfully. "I didn't really want her to go after my father. Something told me that the information the daughter received could be poison, and it would hurt her a lot," the girl's mother said, propping her head up with her palm. "She wasn't the only one," Emma said, "but when I watched Victor's behavior with his daughter, it was heartbreaking. How much cruelty to his own child was revealed in him. And it wasn't Selena's fault. It was very painful for me to hear my husband's words when he shouted, swore, and threw the girl out of our house. I already realized then that I will not live with Victor, but I will definitely meet Selena." "So you broke up with my father?" Selena asked. "Yes, but let's talk about everything in order." When Victor kicked Selena out of the house, Emma took the girl's cell phone number and returned to the kitchen. Her husband, as if nothing had happened, was heating up cutlets in the microwave. The face that had just been angry was calm again, as if absolutely nothing had happened in his life. Emma didn't know how to begin the difficult conversation about her husband's past. She hoped he would tell her everything, try to explain, justify himself. But the man remained silent. Then she decided to be the first to speak. "Why didn't you ever tell me that you had a wife and 2 children?" Emma asked. "Would it change anything?" Victor answered with a question. "They have nothing to do with you. They are in my past." "So why don't you tell me about your past? I basically know nothing about you. All information about you, as it turns out, is under a veil of secrecy." Victor didn't like the conversation Emma had started, but he tried to keep his cool, not to be rude to his wife. In the time he lived in her house, he'd grown accustomed to a sweet, carefree life. Sometimes he returned to his hometown to see his mother. This connection each time gave him the assurance that he was no longer wanted. Everyone considered Victor dead. And then Selena appeared out of nowhere. Victor did not understand how she could know that he was alive, how she found his address, but deep down he felt that sooner or later his secret would be revealed. Any information can only remain reliably secret when only one person possesses it. And what 2 people know, everyone knows, seems to be the popular wisdom. His mother and his sister knew that Victor was not dead. When the man came to his mother and told her that he was being chased by bandits, the woman was worried. Natalie was home that day too. The 3 of them sat down in the kitchen and began to think about how Victor could get away from the debt collectors. "You should go away," the sister suggested. "It's useless," her brother replied. "Those people are so powerful that they will find me even in Chicago. You can't hide from them anywhere. So we must convince them that there is no one else to collect debts from," said the man's mother. "What do you mean?" Brother and sister didn't understand. "Convince them that you're dead, no man, no debts." The 3 of them sat up until the morning, thinking over a plan of action. Burying a living person was not so easy. The most appealing plan seemed to be a car accident. "You should direct the car from the bridge. But at this time it is important to have time to open the door to get out," advised his mother. "Otherwise, underwater you cannot open and drown, die for real." Victor was scared for a moment. He was afraid to die in this crazy adventure, but he was even more afraid of the collectors. "You will succeed, son," his mother encouraged him. "And then when everything settles down, you will be able to live in peace. Natasha and I will do our best to make your funeral as realistic as possible." The sister nodded her head, agreeing with her mother. The plan had succeeded. Victor's body was not found. There was no one to bury him. The man was listed as missing. Then the man's mother went for a trick. She went to the investigator, almost lying at the feet of the policeman, begging him to change the status of her missing son. "He must have been swept away by the current. I'm sure my son drowned, choked by the river water. He was afraid of water since childhood, could not swim," sobbed inconsolable mother in the investigator's office. "Help the poor mother change the status of her son. I beg you. If you do not do this, we will not be able to make a grave in the cemetery. I don't have long to live in this world, but every day I want to come to this grave and mourn my son." She managed to convince the policeman. He changed her status and issued documents for the deceased Victor. So the woman went to her daughter-in-law and said, "Victor's body has not been found and is unlikely to be found, but we must make a burial ground so that there will be a place to come to honor him. You look for things of your husband, which were especially dear to him, which he loved when he was alive. We'll put them in the coffin and bury them, and we'll come to this grave with flowers to remember Victor." Veronica was surprised at the affectionate tone of her mother-in-law, who had never loved her son's wife, but took pity on her and agreed to bury Victor's things in the grave. The day of the funeral was appointed. The mother of Veronica's husband was out of her mind with grief, sobbing, falling to the ground, beating her head against the cross, set on a mound of cemetery earth. Her grief looked so natural that no one could suspect anything. Victor himself was present at his own funeral. Hiding behind the monuments, he watched from afar as the funeral procession went on, as the coffin was lowered into the grave, as his mother sobbed and his wife wiped away her tears. "It's all worked out," he triumphed. Everything changed when he saw his daughter in his house. Victor realized she can tell or has already told everything to his wife. She would definitely publicize the information, because the woman did not know that her husband wanted to be considered dead in order to hide from debts. She will run, chalking her heels with happiness to the police to return him to the status of a living person and cancel the hard-won documents of Victor's mother. Everything he has now could float away from his hands. Emma stared at her husband, waiting for an answer, and he, like some movie on TV, was reviewing the pictures from his funeral. He was quite satisfied with a happy and carefree life with this beautiful woman, and he was also satisfied with the fact that she could not have children. The birth of heirs was no longer part of his life plans, but the man liked to live in his wife's beautiful house, drive an expensive car. Selena could ruin his life. There would be debt collectors again. Despite the passage of so many years, these people do not forgive debts. They will even get them from the grave. I'm surprised they didn't do it. They would have found out Victor wasn't dead. Darling, he spoke to Emma in an affectionate tone. It's true that my past is complicated. Seeing my daughter has knocked me out, disturbed my peace. Let me calm down and I'll tell you everything in great detail in the next few days. Okay, Emma agreed. And in the evening, when the woman was about to go to bed, she heard that her husband was talking to someone on the phone, trying to speak quietly so that his wife would not hear. No, you don't understand. We have to take out all three of them. The woman, the girl, and the boy. What do you mean? Take them out? For good, so that no one will find them. Emma realized that Victor wanted to kill his wife, daughter, and son and had asked someone for that favor. The woman's heart was racing. She suddenly remembered Selena's sad face as tears rolled silently down her cheeks from her eyes. The girl was suffering. She had been through so much, and this bastard wanted to kill her relatives so that no one would know this secret. When her husband fell asleep, Emma went down to the garden. She entered the gazebo, sat down on the sofa, dialed her father's phone number. The woman's father was a man of influence and never refused his daughter's requests. She could only tell him about the situation Emma was in. Emma, Daddy, I'm sorry to wake you up, but this is very important. Her father was always ready to listen to his favorite daughter. The information she gave him went straight to the police department. The investigator who had long ago dealt with the case of the dead man was urgently summoned. Before morning, he managed to raise the documents, remember all the details, and prepare for Victor's arrest. Barely had the sun had time to light up the sky, Emma and Victor's house rang. The woman opened, letting the police officers in. Are you Victor? The investigator asked the still awake man. I am, he answered uncertainly, but what do you want? Victor felt the danger. He was finished. He was about to be arrested. You are under arrest on charges of faking your own death and a number of other charges. Follow us. Yes, of course, but it's a misunderstanding. Victor tried to buy time. We'll find out in the department whether it's a misunderstanding or not. The investigator clearly cut off his attempt to evade. Let me at least get dressed. I can't go in my pajamas, Victor asked. Yes, of course, replied the policeman. You have 5 minutes. The man turned around and started to go up the stairs. Emma looked after him. Perhaps now she was seeing her husband for the last time. Suddenly there was a noise in the yard. It turned out that having gone up to the bedroom on the second floor, Victor had tried to escape by climbing down from the balcony, but the police officers who had stayed on the street were waiting for him downstairs. The man was loaded into a car with bars on the windows and taken to the city. I was very sad and unpleasant to look at all this, Emma said, concluding the story, but when I imagined what would happen to you, I clearly realized that I was doing the right thing. The fact that he escaped from debt is a separate issue, but to order the murder of his own children, that's a real atrocity. People like that shouldn't be allowed to go free. Selena listened to the woman, eyes wide. Daddy, whom she remembered kind, affectionate, cheerful, already showed his other side. But the girl couldn't imagine that he could do that to his family. Had they suffered little through his fault, little lived in starvation, giving his debts to debt collectors. But to kill, it was beyond her comprehension. That's not all the news I want to tell you about. Emma continued, yesterday I went to the investigator, found out everything about Victor's past. The man turned out to be quite talkative, especially he was in a great mood from the fact that he was able to close the hanging, which spoiled his reputation for many years. The management of the investigator every now and then reminded him of this high-profile and resonant case, and now it will be sent for further investigation. The guilty will be punished. The woman asked the investigator to find out which of the collectors could have hunted Victor. The profession is not so common. It was impossible to imagine that there was a whole staff of such employees in the city. The investigator quickly got information about those who go to the wife of the arrested Victor. Then Emma headed toward them. Arrogant-looking men did not immediately want to listen to Emma, but she called her father, and in 10 minutes she was invited to the office of the head of the collection firm. She told everything to the important and rather fat man sitting across from her, and then asked, "Please tell me how much money your employees were able to collect from the woman whose husband had allegedly died." The supervisor thought for a moment, then stood up and walked over to a large cabinet with glass doors. From there, he took out a large folder, sat down in his seat, and began to study the debtor's file. Emma waited patiently. Then the man took a piece of paper and wrote a sum on it, handed it to the woman. Emma's eyes went wide and her heart raced. She grew up in a poor family. Her father held an important position and was always in leadership positions. Emma herself had no problems with money. She could afford a lot, but when she saw the amount, she almost fainted. Even for her, the amount written on a piece of paper by the head of the collection agency was cosmic, prohibitive. How could a poor woman pay such money for her husband without starving herself and her children? Emma thought. All evening she had not found a place for herself, wandering about the house from room to room, going from corner to corner. She didn't know how to help that humble girl, her mother and brother who had suffered so much in their lives because of Victor. She even felt guilty that she had given that bastard almost 10 years of a cloudless, carefree life. Everything the man wanted, Emma presented to him on a silver platter. He knew no refusal in anything. The woman never counted how much money he spent from her bank account. Finally, a good idea came into her head, as Emma herself thought. The woman sat down in her chair and dialed her father's number. "Emma, Daddy, we need to help some very good people." Veronica and Selena listened to Emma in silence. They had questions as the new information came in, but they didn't interrupt the woman, seeing how hard this story was for her. Emma reached into her bag that hung on the kitchen door handle and pulled out some papers. "This is the deed to my house. It's in your name." She turned to Veronica. "My house is worth a lot of money. My father helped me to draw up the document quickly through a notary. I, in turn, went to a real estate agency and agreed to sell the property." Veronica and Selena did not immediately understand what Emma was getting at. The woman was silent for a while, looking at the papers spread out in front of the girl's mom. "This house belongs to you now, Veronica," she said, "and you can sell it and buy the children an apartment in a good neighborhood. That way they'll have their own place. Or you can go and live in this house. It has all the facilities, a big garden, and even a swimming pool." Emma smiled, and Veronica and Selena looked at her in bewilderment. "Believe me, this is the smallest fraction of what I can do for you. I can't bear to think that while you were starving, depriving yourself of the most basic necessities, I was essentially making Victor comfortable. It hurts me so much to think about it. That's why I made the decision to give you this house. It's up to you what you do with it. Any help you need from me." Gradually coming to their senses, mother and daughter began to smile. And then Veronica asked Emma worriedly, "Where will you live?" "Don't worry about me. You forgot that I have a luxurious, huge apartment in the center of the city." The woman reassured them. "Frankly speaking, I never liked to live outside the city in this village. It was Victor who persuaded me. Now I understand why he had to." "Thank you so much. You're an incredible woman." Selena walked over to Emma and hugged her. She suddenly felt that this woman was very dear to her, very close, very kind. "That's not all," Emma said. She opened a beautiful leather purse with rhinestones and took out a plastic card. "This is for you, Veronica." She handed the card to the woman. "There is a certain amount of money in this account. I think it will be enough for you to live comfortably, to be able to finish your son's schooling, and to help him get ahead in life." "No, not at all." Veronica tried to refuse the gift, waving her hands. "Take it. I am very pleased to do something nice for you. I need to understand that you will not need anything more. Every month, the card balance will be replenished. I'll take care of it." All three of them hugged each other. Tears of joy rolled down Veronica's face. Several months passed. Veronica and Selena sold Emma's house and bought 2 one-bedroom apartments. Selena moved into one of them. The other was waiting for Harvey to grow up. The girl was settling in. She was happy that her mother was not poor. Thanks to Emma, and she had her own cozy nest. On the first day, Selena brought Silly with her. That's what she called the kitten an old woman had sold her at the flea market. Silly, Selena called loudly to her pet. Where are you hiding, little one? She walked around boxes of things, bulks, bags. The things were not yet unpacked, probably crawled into one of the boxes and sleeps there peacefully. The girl began to open the boxes one by one as she suddenly heard a knock on the door. She opened it. On the threshold stood a handsome young man. In his hands he was holding Silly. Hello, I'm your neighbor. Isn't that your cute little creature on my balcony? The man handed the kitten to Selena. Come to me, you're my happiness, said the girl, smiling.